Chapter 562. If an ordinary person were to pull the Nirvana heart demon flame directly into the sea of consciousness, that person would definitely die at the first moment, because the sea of consciousness was more fragile than the sea of chi. If the sea of consciousness collapsed, the person would die. But Yi Guchen was different. He cultivated the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra. The Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra cultivated Yi Guchen's physical body, from the sea of chi to the sea of consciousness, to a level that ordinary people could not reach. Of course, it was accompanied by endless pain. The moment Yi Guchen completely pulled the fire seed of the Nirvana heart demon flame into his sea of consciousness, Yi Guchen felt as if his entire soul had been ignited. Even with the nourishment of the soul extradition lotus, Yi Guchen's sea of consciousness was like a pot of boiling oil, making a sizzling sound. It was an indescribable pain. Yi Guchen's lips were pale, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. It was a horrifying sight. He was truly bleeding from his 7 orifices. But at the same time that he was enduring extreme pain, Yi Guchen was also constantly operating his soul power to envelop the fire seed, trying his best to merge it, refine it, and control it. However, the Nirvana heart demon flame was a flame with spirituality. It was not like the heavenly sun Shenming fire, which could be refined so easily. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many charred skeletons on the ground. Boom! As if sensing a threat, the fire seed of the Nirvana heart demon flame started to roll again. It released another unique and terrifying ability, the heart demon flame. Just as the Nirvana heart demon flame was rolling, the scene in front of Yi Guchen suddenly changed. He was no longer in the lightning fire ancient cave. Instead, he was on a desolate plain. There were countless figures surrounding him, looking at him with sighs, pity, and sarcasm. Yi Guchen was in a daze for a moment. In front of him, a figure as elegant as a lotus flew out like a bird with broken wings. There was also a sparkling sword embryo that was sent flying. "Silly boy, remember this lady." A sweet voice, weak, regretless, and pitiful, rang in Yi Guchen's ears. Boom! Yi Guchen's mind suddenly shook. This was the scene of Su Jianshi blocking the innate sword embryo for him. Yi Guchen looked into the distance again. Not far away in the sky, a figure dressed in a Big Dipper robe and wearing a Mizar star crown was looking at Yi Guchen with undisguised contempt and indifference. Gu Xiaoyang. Yi Guchen's mind was in turmoil. Although he clearly knew that this scene was created by the Nirvana heart demon flame, the grievance and the hatred that was carved into his bones could not be eliminated. In order to save him, Su Jianshi had been struck by his sword and had been in a deep slumber ever since. His innate ability, the innate sword embryo, was still in Gu Xiaoyang's body. It helped him become a peerless genius with 2 innate abilities. This kind of enmity would not end until one of them was dead. At this moment, pitch-black flames were rising from Gu Xiaoyang's body, giving Gu Xiaoyang a demonic aura. It was obvious that this was the Nirvana heart demon flame's doing, because Gu Xiaoyang was Yi Guchen's inner demon. If he didn't get rid of him, it would greatly affect Yi Guchen in the future. Yi Guchen, did you know that you were just a clown from the beginning to the end? You couldn't even protect your woman. Your congenital sword embryo was taken away by me and became my divine sense. You were just a humble stepping stone. Yi Guchen said. Gu Xiaoyang stood high in the sky, surrounded by pitch-black flames that seemed to want to burn the world. This was the inner demon's question. It made Yi Guchen feel ashamed and his heart shattered. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be incomparably sad and angry. But who was Yi Guchen? Even an inner demon couldn't shake his heart. However, Yi Guchen finally understood why the bodies of the dead saints and saintesses were twisted and crazy. Not everyone could resist the influence of an inner demon. Yi Guchen, I risked my life to save you, but what about you? Do you even have me in your heart? Why didn't you save me? I hate you. At this moment, the beautiful figure in green suddenly turned around. Her beautiful face was covered with blood. She looked like an evil spirit and cursed Yi Guchen with the most heart-wrenching curse. Yi Guchen's calm expression suddenly changed. An inner demon couldn't affect him. But Yi Guchen wouldn't allow the elegant girl in his heart to turn into such an image. Nirvana heart demon flame, your test has angered me. Yiguchen closed his eyes. With a boom, his spiritual sea crazily revolved. Endless soul fluctuations seemed to shatter all the illusions before him. Rumble. The ground seemed to collapse as the surrounding scenery peeled off. He returned to the lightning fire ancient cave. I will save Su Jianshi, and I will kill Gu Xiaoyang. Therefore, an inner demon like the Nirvana heart demon flame is useless against me. Yiguchen roared. Within his spiritual sea, the undying soul pearl that Ying Ning had given him shattered as well. A powerful and pure spiritual energy gushed out once again. First came the soul extradite lotus, then the undying soul pearl. The soul power in Yiguchen's spiritual sea was now terrifyingly vigorous. Nirvana heart demon flame, refine. Yiguchen roared again in his heart. The meteorite demon soul butterfly also helped to release the astral soul wave. For a moment, the soul extradite lotus, the meteorite demon soul butterfly, and the meteorite demon soul lotus. There was also Yiguchen's 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. With all kinds of support, the Nirvana heart demon flame was also forced into a desperate situation. It was wrapped and refined by the vigorous soul power as it made its final struggle. After 2 hours, Yiguchen's mind rumbled. His spiritual sea spun again like a whirlpool. His cultivation had officially broken through to the 9 changes of the Divine Soul Realm. Moreover, it was the peak of the 9 changes of the Divine Soul Realm. At the same time, his spiritual sea surged. The range of his spiritual sea expanded again, and the intensity of his soul power multiplied. The second minor tribulation of the spiritual sea had been broken through. Yiguchen's spiritual sea had become a perfect spiritual sea. Moreover, the Nirvana heart demon flame was also refined under the continuous refining and erosion of his soul power. At the moment when everything was done, Yiguchen suddenly opened his eyes. 2 pitch-black flames burned in Yiguchen's pupils. What was more shocking was that pitch-black flames were really gushing out from Yiguchen's eyes. The aura of his 9 changes of the Divine Soul Realm spread out, shaking the entire space as if a raging dragon had awakened. At the same time, an incomparably terrifying soul fluctuation poured out like a raging sea. That kind of soul fluctuation was enough to make a Divine Soul Realm expert tremble in fear. Yiguchen stood straight, feeling that his cultivation was unprecedentedly prosperous. His aura was surging and, more importantly, his soul power was far stronger than before. It could be said that Yiguchen took a risk to refine the Nirvana heart demon flame. Although the risk was not small, the harvest was also incomparably huge. It could be said that it was a rapid improvement. Chapter 563. Yiguchen stood in place, sensing his body and counting his gains. First, it was naturally his cultivation base. Yiguchen's cultivation base had already broken through to the peak of the 9 transformations of the Divine Soul. Next, as long as he relied on himself to comprehend the truth between life and death, he could break through to the life and death threshold. And Yiguchen was sure that once he broke through, it would be the great threshold. It was definitely not the kind of small threshold that relied on the will of life and death to break through. Next, it was naturally the 2 tribulations of the Sea of Consciousness soul tribulation. Now, his Sea of Consciousness had become a great perfection Sea of Consciousness. If Yiguchen's Sea of Consciousness was just a well before, but now, it was a vast river, surging endlessly. Yiguchen estimated that the range of his Sea of Consciousness and the strength of his soul power were almost 10 times that of an ordinary Divine Soul Realm expert. This was a kind of gap like a natural chasm. And the Sea of Consciousness was the foundation, the most important, related to the Soul Palace and even the primordial spirit in the future. It could be said that as long as the foundation was laid, Yiguchen would be able to crush people of the same level in the future at any level. Next is the last small tribulation of the Sea of Consciousness soul tribulation. As long as I pass it, I can cultivate the chaotic Sea of Consciousness. I wonder what kind of power it will have. Yiguchen thought to himself. His great perfection Sea of Consciousness was like a river, far surpassing that of ordinary people. But if he could cultivate the chaotic sea of consciousness, it would be comparable to the endless sea, many times stronger than the great perfection sea of consciousness. But to cultivate the chaotic sea of consciousness, he still needed a kind of heaven and earth treasure called the chaotic origin crystal. This kind of rare item was difficult to find, and its preciousness was probably comparable to that of Saint Medicines. It would be difficult for Yi Guchen to find it in a short period of time. Moreover, Yi Guchen had refined the heart demon flame, which was another powerful trump card. Although the heavenly sun Xianming fire was devoured, it made the heart demon flame stronger. Yi Guchen could also use the heart demon flame to burn the enemy's soul. It could even trigger the enemy's inner demons. One could imagine what would happen if the enemy's inner demons were to erupt at a critical moment. However, Yi Guchen also knew that this method could only be used against existences whose soul force was weaker than his own. If Yi Guchen used this move against a divine dwelling expert, it would only result in a backlash. Yi Guchen observed his sea of consciousness and made an unexpected discovery. It was the second star spot that appeared on the meteorite demon soul butterfly's wings. Yi Guchen knew that the meteorite demonic butterfly was probably still in its infant state. And just now, when Yi Guchen was breaking through in his cultivation, it had also absorbed the soul energy of the soul extraditation lotus and the seed pearl, which was why it had undergone such a transformation. Now, with the addition of a spot, the meteorite demonic soul butterfly was even stronger. It also released wisps of soul fluctuations, as if it was happy to tell Yi Guchen that it had acquired some new means. It wasn't just the simple star soul wave and defensive light shield anymore. The harvest this time is too great. Yi Guchen took a deep breath, his eyes shining brightly. His strength had skyrocketed again. If he could obtain the inheritance left behind by the ancient god in the tomb of the fiend gods and cultivate to become a one-star ancient god, Yi Guchen was absolutely confident that he could crush a minor Xian martial realm cultivator without any external help. After adjusting his breath, Yi Guchen also left the space. However, he didn't directly leave the lightning fire ancient cave. Instead, he spread out his spirit perception to explore if there were other opportunities in this place. Yi Guchen's spirit perception range was 4,000 feet before, but now it had skyrocketed to 10,000 feet. It should be known that an ordinary expert in the 9th transformation of the Divine Soul realm could only sense about 1,000 feet. Yi Guchen's perception range was 10 times that of them. It would have been fine if he didn't explore, but once he did, Yi Guchen discovered something. In another cave in the depths of the Lightning Fire Ancient Cave, Yi Guchen could vaguely sense an extremely explosive power. There was even a trace of it that Yi Guchen was familiar with. Enemies are bound to meet. After Yi Guchen sensed the fluctuation, a faint cold light surged in his eyes. If he was not wrong, that aura belonged to Lei Jiuyo. Yi Guchen did not forget that Lei Jiuyo and the others had attacked in the ancient barren Forbidden Zone, killing the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest in the valley. Although Zhou Tong had acted as the middleman, it was a fact that Lei Jiuyo and the others had attacked. Lei Jiuyo has obtained the will of life and death in the ancient barren fighting ring. His strength must be extraordinary now. It's a good opportunity to test my current strength. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered, and he flashed away. In the Lightning Fire Ancient Cave, he didn't have to worry about anything. On the other side, in the depths of a cave, there was a huge space. The space was filled with endless thunderbolts. As the thunderbolts rolled, they vaguely condensed into the shape of dragons. If one were to count them carefully, there were a total of 9 thunder dragons rolling in the space. They intertwined with each other and turned into a cocoon-like appearance. In the middle of the cocoon, there was a figure sitting with his legs crossed. His long blue hair fluttered, and there were thunderbolts shooting out from every strand of his hair. It was the unparalleled holy son of the Thunder Tribe, Lei Jiuyo. The bloodline of the Thunder God that he possessed was of the same level as the bloodline of the Water Dragon of the Dragon Lady. Moreover, he was a genius with double unusual thunders. In addition, he had obtained the will of life and death and had some comprehension. Currently, an ordinary Triple Crown King could not defeat him. At a certain moment, Lei Jiuyo suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were like 2 thunder lakes. Lightning bolts that were 3 feet long shot out of his eyes. Lei Jiuyo let out a long roar, and his aura was like a dragon's roar. The 9 thunder dragons that were surrounding him roared at the sky at the same time, as though they were completely assimilated and controlled by Lei Jiuyo. Great opportunity. Now that I have refined the 9 dragons' dark bomb, in addition to the 2 types of unusual thunders that I already have, I am an unparalleled holy sun with triple unusual thunders. Now, other than Tuobashang, no one can stop me. Lei Jiuyo laughed heartily, and his aura was extremely terrifying. Thunderbolts shot out from the void. Originally, he had double unusual thunders. After he started comprehending the will of life and death, he was considered the strongest person after Tuobashang. Perhaps only the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and a few others could be on par with him. But now, after Lei Jiuyo found the 9 dragons' dark bomb in the lightning fire ancient cave, he started to refine it. The dark bomb was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to refine. However, Lei Jiuyo had the bloodline of the Thunder God and was naturally compatible with thunderbolts. In addition, with the help of his supreme totem, the sky-devouring thunderous beast, he successfully refined the 9 dragons' dark bomb after spending some time. After refining the 9 dragons' dark bomb, Lei Jiuyo's strength increased again. He reckoned that even if he were to face the transformed Tuobashang, he would not need to be too wary. As for Mu Lanyue and the others, Lei Jiuyo did not take them seriously. Everyone thinks that Tuobashang is the best candidate to be the young king. Now that I have triple unusual thunders, I might be able to compete with Tuobashang. By then, I will be the only king to unify the barbarian tribe. Lightning shot out from Lei Jiuyo's eyes. His ambition was not any weaker than Tuobashang's. Oh, unifying the barbarian tribe? At this moment, a faint voice was heard. Who is it? Lei Jiuyo shouted, and lightning surged around him. Yiguchen walked out slowly. Dugubai. Lei Jiuyo frowned slightly. Outside the 5 Elements Temple, Mu Lanfang deliberately targeted Yiguchen. She wanted everyone to know that Yiguchen wanted to deal with Tuobashang alone. Lei Jiuyo naturally noticed it, but he did not care. After all, it was not uncommon to see arrogant people. Dugubai, you dare to show yourself? Great, I have just refined the 9 dragons' dark bomb and my strength has increased tremendously. I can use you as a whetstone. Lei Jiuyo's tone was filled with contempt, as if Yiguchen was a turtle in a jar. Oh, then we seem to be on the same side. However, you will not be able to walk out of the lightning fire ancient cave today. Yiguchen said indifferently. You are the one who will die. Lei Jiuyo raised his eyebrows and stretched out one hand to attack Yiguchen. Chapter 564. In other people's eyes, Yiguchen was a Triple Crown champion who was quite powerful. However, Lei Jiuyo didn't take him seriously. Especially now that Lei Jiuyo had refined the 9 dragons' dark bomb. The only opponent left in his eyes was Tuobashang. Yiguchen was nothing in his eyes at the moment. Lei Jiuyo stretched out his hand as if he was going to suppress Yiguchen. Vigorous thunder totem power gathered in front of his hand and formed a ferocious thunder claw. Then he clawed at Yiguchen's head. If it had been an ordinary person, their head would have exploded under this claw. However, Yiguchen curled his lips into a faint smile. He activated the green dragon totem in his body and vigorous totem power gathered in his arm. In the end, it turned into a dragon claw that was covered in scales. After the ancestral totem was fully awakened, Yiguchen's totem possession technique had reached the point of perfection. The power of the green dragon claw was much stronger than before. Yiguchen stretched out his dragon claw and crushed the thunder claw that was coming at him. After the thunder claw was crushed, there was still a glaring thunderbolt that entered Yiguchen's body. If it were an ordinary person, even if they could withstand the thunderbolt, they would be paralyzed and unable to move. However, Yiguchen looked calm and he moved freely as if he was immune to the thunderbolt. When Lei Jiuyo saw it, he frowned. He seemed to have noticed something unusual about Yiguchen. You are quite capable to be able to defeat Tuobalai. However, that's all. Although Lei Jiuyo felt that something was amiss, he didn't think too much about it. He was still very confident in his own strength. In the next moment, Lei Juyo took a step forward and there was a thunderous sound coming from the bottom of his feet. There was a sizzling sound and lightning flashed. Lei Juyo's body appeared less than 3 feet away from Yiguchen like a ghost. Thunderstorm fist. Lei Juyo spread out his 5 fingers and lightning coiled around them. Then, he closed them and turned them into a fist. He aimed it at Yiguchen's chest. Endless lightning coiled around it, showing the power of this fist. Good timing. Yiguchen also threw out a punch. The two collided, and an incomparably powerful shockwave surged out in all directions. It caused the entire space to rumble. Lei Juyo had also been tempered by strange lightning since he was young. Coupled with the bloodline of the Thunder God, his physical strength and tenacity were exceptionally strong. It could be said that in the entire barbarian race, there were not many saints who could compete with him in terms of physical strength. Unfortunately, he met Yiguchen. Boom! An extremely powerful force was transmitted from the tip of the fist. Lei Juyo's expression changed abruptly and he took a few steps back. Moreover, he swung his arm in an attempt to dissipate the terrifying force. However, there were still cracks spreading on his bones. Your physical body? Lei Juyo's face darkened. By then, if he still dared to look down on Yiguchen, he would be really stupid. Yiguchen also waved his hand slightly to get rid of the thunderstorm chi that had invaded his body. It had to be said that if it were an ordinary person, the thunderstorm totem power would be really difficult to deal with. However, it was a pity that Yiguchen also had exotic lightning in his body. Hence, he was immune to it. With your cultivation, you are definitely not a nobody in the barbarian race. I don't believe that you are just a wandering barbarian. Lei Juyo looked deeply at Yiguchen. He immediately raised his hands and activated the exotic lightning in his body. In an instant, 2 types of exotic lightning coiled around his arms. One type of thunderstorm was blood red and the other was light black. They were the 2 types of exotic lightning that Lei Juyo originally had, Blood Soul Thunder and Dark Sky Thunder. Void Crystal Lightning Spiritual Hand. Lei Juyo's arms were coiled with 2 types of exotic lightning. It was as though he was wearing 2 thunder gloves. As he moved, thunder rumbled and the void shook. Lei Juyo threw out a punch and there were hundreds of lightning bolts. With the addition of the exotic lightning, the power was even stronger and it charged towards Yiguchen fiercely. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows and said with a tinge of interest, "Do you think that you are the only one who has exotic lightning?" Yiguchen also activated the exotic lightning in his body. In an instant, the purple thunderstorm burst out. It was the purple lightning ghastly thunder. Psst. Exotic lightning. This time, Lei Juyo was really surprised. The young man in front of him, Dugubai, always seemed to surprise him. However, there was something that shocked Lei Juyo even more. Yiguchen triggered his thoughts and a silver thunderstorm that was more terrifying than the purple thunderstorm burst out. It caused the void to shake and rumble continuously. Dark lightning. Lei Juyo could not help but exclaim. He had the bloodline of the Thunder God and he was very sensitive to the exotic lightning. Naturally, he could tell that the silver thunderstorm that Yiguchen took out was of the dark lightning class. One should know that if Lei Juyo had not refined the 9 Dragons dark lightning previously, he would only have 2 types of ordinary exotic lightning. For you, besides my Thunder tribe, which other tribe has so many exotic lightnings and even dark lightning? Lei Juyo's eyes were filled with lightning as he stared at Yiguchen. It was as though he wanted to see through him. You will know very soon. Yiguchen smiled coldly. He did not intend to hide his identity. That was because he had to get rid of Lei Juyo today. My Thunder tribe also has a secret skill that can strip exotic lightnings. Today, after I kill you and take away your 2 types of exotic lightnings, I will be a peerless holy sun with 5 types of exotic lightnings. Even to Obashang will not be my match. Lei Juyo's eyes were filled with blazing light as though he had taken Yiguchen as a leek to be harvested. He activated the Void Crystal Lightning Spirit Hand with both hands and caused the Void Lightning to burst out and attack Yiguchen. Yiguchen also activated the 2 types of exotic lightnings and collided with Lei Juyo. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of fists hitting flesh reverberated in the space. Yiguchen was slightly surprised. Lei Juyo was indeed not weak. His totemic power was used to perfection in his every move, as if he had mastered it through a comprehensive study. Don't you know that I have obtained the life and death intent in the ancient battlefield? Although I have not fully refined it, I have already touched the life and death juncture. You can say that I am half a step into the life and death juncture. Lei Juyo smiled confidently. He clasped his hands together and the thunder totem power in his body boiled to the extreme. A vigorous power of thunder and lightning was brewing between his palms. Sky Thunder 8 Extremes Force. Lei Juyo activated the thunder flash and teleported in front of Yiguchen. He then pushed out with both palms. Rumble. It was as though a thunderbolt had passed through and 8 thunders exploded. The power of the Sky Thunder 8 Extremes Force was extremely strong. Under such a move, an ordinary 3-crown king would be seriously injured and on the verge of death. However, there was a 5-colored brilliance in Yiguchen's eyes. He no longer hid anything and the 5-colored totem power in his body exploded. The totem power of the 5 attributes spread out and formed a roulette in front of Yiguchen. It was a manifestation of the 5 elements Tao. This is... Lei Juyo's eyes were wide open. All the previous shock was not as shocking as the scene before him. Boom! The 5-colored roulette collided with the Sky Thunder 8 Extremes Force and a destructive wave spread out in all directions. Both of them retreated, but Lei Juyo was obviously at a disadvantage. However, at this moment, there was an unconcealable astonishment on his face. Lei Juyo, maybe you don't know who your opponent is. Yiguchen stood upright like a sword that could hold up the sky. The crimson blood hell sword had appeared in Yiguchen's hand. Behind him, the 5 ancestor totems were faintly visible in the void. You are the 5-crown king. Lei Juyo gritted his teeth and his tone was cold. However, there was a tinge of shock in his eyes. He had never expected that the Triple-Crown King, who had embarrassed himself outside the 5 Elements Temple and said that he would take on Toba Shang alone, was actually the 5-Crown King who was covered in blood armor that day. Chapter 565. Lei Juyo looked at Yiguchen and his expression changed drastically. He could no longer remain calm. He did not expect that the ordinary young man from the barbarian tribe was the 5-Crown King, who was clad in blood armor and wielded a blood sword. If this news were to spread, it would shock everyone. After all, the mysterious 5-Crown King had attracted the attention of everyone in the barbarian tribe. Even the great elder, Wanyan Lan, wanted to find him. However, Lei Juyo did not expect that the mysterious 5-Crown King would be right under everyone's nose. Moreover, he was ridiculed by everyone. There was no more ironic scene than this. You hid your identity and entered the door of the ancient god. But, do you want to become a young king? Lei Juyo gritted his teeth and said word by word. He had thought that his only opponent was Toba Shang. However, Yiguchen's identity as 5-Crown King had been revealed and he was fearful. Although his current strength was far from what he had been at the ancient battle ring, he was still a 5-Crown King. However, he was still the 5-Crown King after all. No one in the barbarian race would look down on him. Yiguchen did not reply but smiled faintly. Lei Juyo, the grudge between us is not small. Let's fight. Although you are the holy son of the lightning tribe, your understanding of the way of lightning might not be higher than mine. After Yiguchen finished speaking, he activated the strange lightning in his body again and the 2 types of strange lightning surged out. What a joke! So what if you are the 5-Crown King? If I kill you, I will be famous immediately. Even Toba Shang will be inferior to me. Lei Juyo's expression turned fierce. He wanted to go all out to fight Yiguchen. However, in the next moment, Yiguchen's move caused Lei Juyo's expression to change. Strange lightning fusion, kill. Yiguchen's purple lightning, ghastly lightning and extreme void Xian lightning intertwined in midair. After that, they fused and turned into an even more powerful silver-purple lightning. It was the fused purple void Xian lightning. Rumble. The silver-purple lightning was like a raging dragon that was circling around and it charged towards Lei Juyo. How is that possible? Lei Juyo was in disbelief. Mutated lightning was a violent energy. Even if one could refine it, it was almost impossible to fuse it together. Yi Guchen was able to fuse with the mutated lightning only because of a momentary accident. Lei Juyo also unleashed his Blood Soul Devil Lightning and Dark Sky Black Lightning. The two types of lightning collided with the Purple Void Mystic Lightning in the void. However, the Purple Void Profound Lightning was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. It tore apart the two types of strange lightning and continued to attack Lei Juyo. Damn it! Lei Juyo's face darkened. He claimed to be the Lightning Clan's peerless holy son, but in the end, he actually lost to Five Crown King in the Tao of Lightning. How could he accept this? Sky-devouring lightning beast, go! Lei Juyo was not surprised at all. He summoned his ultimate totem, the sky-devouring thunder beast. As boundless lightning surged, a terrifying giant beast spirit wrapped in strange lightning appeared. That giant beast was like an ancient Taoai. Opening its big black mouth, it devoured the purple void mystic lightning inside. Yi Guchen's expression did not change. He similarly summoned his 5 great progenitor totems: Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, Soaring Snake. Even though the 5 elements totems did not have a tribute restraining effect on lightning attribute totems. However, the innate pressure of the progenitor totems still affected the sky-devouring thunder beast. Lei Juyo immediately sensed that his sky-devouring thunder beast's strength was suppressed by at least 30%. The lightning on its body dimmed significantly. 5-colored totem, go! Yi Guchen's mind stirred. The 5 great progenitor totems seemingly formed a killing formation, trapping the sky-devouring thunder beast directly. After refining the 5-element stone, Yi Guchen's understanding of the Tao of the 5 elements became even deeper. Deploying the 5-colored totem also became smoother. Lei Juyo, bring out your true capabilities, Yi Guchen said coolly. His true strength had yet to be displayed. If Lei Juyo only had this much ability, then it would be disappointing. Pentacrown King, don't be too smug. You will have a taste of my abilities. Lei Juyo's expression was grave as he took out his divine weapon, a silver lightning rod. Thunderclap of the 9 heavens. 2 different types of lightning coiled around the silver lightning rod. Lei Juyo consecutively struck out 9 times with each rod stronger than the previous one. In an instant, 9 lightning rod shadows smashed towards Yi Guchen's head. Lei Juyo's current strength was almost at the quasi-profound martial realm. So when he attacked, the power was naturally far stronger than an ordinary expert at the pinnacle of the 9 transformations divine soul realm. However, Yi Guchen wasn't a pushover either. He activated the edge-splitting array in the blood hell sword, and a sharp sword radiance shot out. Then, Yi Guchen added the power of the white tiger totem, causing the blood hell sword to become even sharper. Yi Guchen used the 5 types of sword wills. Sometimes they were incomparably sharp, sometimes they were surging with flames, and sometimes they were as gentle as water. They collided with the 9 rod shadows, causing ripples to burst forth. 5 elements Tao. Lei Juyo's gaze was deep as he could sense how difficult Yi Guchen was to deal with. He executed the thunder flash again and teleported to Yi Guchen's side. The two of them began to fight in close quarters. Yi Guchen seemed to be tempering his 5-sword intense. As he circulated his sword aura, there seemed to be a resonance. On the other hand, Lei Juyo's rod aura was ferocious as it carried the overbearing power of lightning. However, Yi Guchen was able to deal with it calmly. Take this! Lei Juyo bellowed. World Lightning Punishment. Rumble. A large patch of dark clouds spread out above Lei Juyo's head. The heavenly thunder rolled like a tide of thunder, pouring down on Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen executed the shadow step and shuttled through the thunder tide. The surface of his body was also covered with purple void mysterious lightning. He suddenly got close to Lei Juyo and activated his Sea of Consciousness. In an instant, an extremely vigorous soul power surged out and bombarded Lei Juyo. This is soul power. Lei Juyo's face changed. That was because that spiritual strength made him feel a kind of terror. Guardian Thunder Seal. Lei Juyo roared. In between his eyebrows, a silver square seal appeared and released a silver soul fluctuation. It was Lei Jiuyo's Sea of Consciousness guardian spiritual object. Of course, such a spiritual object could only be obtained by those who were lucky. For example, Xian Hao's golden spirit soul protection bell. If Yi Guchen had not broken through, Lei Jiuyo's guardian thunder seal might not be able to do anything to him. However, it was different now. Yi Guchen immediately communicated with the meteorite demon soul butterfly in his Sea of Consciousness. In an instant, the meteorite demon soul butterfly flapped its wings. Then, a needle as thin as a cow's hair flew out from between Yi Guchen's eyebrows and into the void. It was hard to notice. The needle that was formed by soul power penetrated the guardian thunder seal's defense and landed in Lei Jiuyo's Sea of Consciousness. Then it exploded. Lei Jiuyo let out a shrill scream. First, he felt a sharp pain in his head. Then, the soul power in his head exploded. He had a splitting headache and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. What is this? Lei Jiuyo's body shook. Yi Guchen's footsteps flashed and he took advantage of the opportunity. The needle was naturally a new skill that the meteorite demon soul butterfly had comprehended after its transformation. It was called the Soul Breaker Needle. If the Star Soul Wave was a fierce area skill, the Soul Breaker Needle could break through the defense of most guardian spiritual objects and attack the enemy's Sea of Consciousness. It was impossible to guard against this move. Yi Guchen held the Blood Hell sword and charged forward. Lei Jiuyo was in a frenzy. His eyes were bleeding and he stared at Yi Guchen. 5 Crown King, die. 9 Dragons Mysterious Bomb, go. Lei Jiuyo roared furiously and took out the strongest variant lightning that he had refined previously, the 9 Dragons Mysterious Bomb. Chapter 566. Yi Guchen's tactics had infuriated Lei Jiuyo. At the same time, Lei Jiuyo knew that if he did not unleash all his skills today, there was a risk that he would die here. 5 Crown King was more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Hence, Lei Jiuyo made a prompt decision and took out the 9 Dragons Dark Thunder. The power of the 9 Dragons Dark Thunder was far stronger than the 2 exotic thunders that Lei Jiuyo possessed. Plus, the 9 Dragons Dark Thunder could form 9 dragon-shaped thunderbolts and it was extremely powerful. Lei Jiuyo activated the exotic thunders and suddenly, 9 dragon roars filled the entire space. The void seemed to be filled with thunderbolts as 9 huge lightning dragons flew out from Lei Jiuyo's body. Their bodies were made of lightning and they spat out thunderbolts. The aura was terrifying. Interesting. Yi Guchen's eyes twinkled. 5 Crown King, I'll let you have a taste of the power of the 9 Dragons Dark Thunder. Lei Jiuyo raised his hand and a huge lightning dragon opened its mouth to bite. Yi Guchen held the Blood Hell sword and the sword radiance spat out. The purple void mysterious thunder was wrapped around the sword, and he slashed at the huge lightning dragon. However, to Yi Guchen's surprise, the huge lightning dragon opened its mouth and swallowed the purple void mysterious thunder. In Yi Guchen's body, the 5-colored totem power gushed out and formed a shield around his body. However, he was still hit by the huge lightning dragon and he was forced to take a dozen steps back. Just 1 lightning dragon was already so powerful, let alone 9 of them. Seeing that Yi Guchen was pushed back, Lei Jiuyo's tensed face relaxed slightly. However, he wasn't in a good condition either. His Sea of Consciousness was injured and his 7 orifices were bleeding. If it wasn't for the Guardian Thunder Seal suppressing his Sea of Consciousness, Lei Jiuyo would have fainted long ago. Lei Jiuyo triggered his thoughts and the 2nd lightning dragon flew at Yi Guchen again. Lei Jiuyo was confident that he could severely injure Yi Guchen with the 2 lightning dragons attacking at the same time. However, the corners of Yi Guchen's mouth curled into a faint smile. Let me see if your 9 Dragons Profound Bomb is more powerful or if my Nirvana Heart Demon Flame is more powerful. Yi Guchen thought to himself. Suddenly, a pitch-black flame rose from his body. The temperature of the pitch-black flame was extremely high. It distorted space and emitted waves of heat. What was even more surprising was that as the pitch-black flame spread, wave after wave of frightening soul ripples that resembled the wails of ghosts and the howls of wolves also poured out in all directions. That is, Such an unforeseen event caused Lei Juyo's expression to freeze once again. Yi Guchen raised his hand, and the pitch-black flames turned into lines of fire that surged out and entangled the two thunder dragons that were bombarding him. At a glance, it looked like two lightning dragons were entangled by pitch-black flames. This scene caused Lei Juyo to be extremely shocked. He knew very well how powerful the Nine Dragons' profound bomb was. It could be said that the Nine Dragons' profound bomb was an extremely explosive energy. Ordinary unusual fire and lightning could not compete with the Nine Dragons' profound bomb. However, the strange pitch-black flame was able to compete with the Nine Dragons' profound bomb. Lei Juyo's eyes flickered as though he had thought of something. He stared at Yi Guchen and said in an indescribable tone, "Could that be the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame?" Lei Juyo knew that the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame existed in the Lightning Fire Ancient Cave. In the past, when the door of the ancient god opened, many saints and saintesses of the fire tribe wanted to refine it. However, in the end, without exception, all of them suffered a backlash and were burned to death. As time passed, no one dared to touch the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame anymore. It could be said that the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame was definitely not weaker than the Nine Dragons' profound bomb. However, he did not expect Yi Guchen to be able to refine it. Nine Dragons' Raging Dipper. Lei Juyo's face was terrifyingly gloomy. Yi Guchen's moves were endless and had exceeded his expectations time and time again. If he did not go all out, he might really be defeated. He used his moves again, and this time, he did not hold back. The nine lightning dragons attacked at the same time and roared in the void. The strong power of lightning almost filled every crack in the place. Lei Juyo's body was also surrounded by lightning, and he attacked Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen raised his hand, and a pitch-black flame surged out. It seemed to have formed a curtain of flames, and shrouded the nine thunder and lightning dragons that were attacking him. The pitch-black flames collided with the lightning dragons, and there was a burst of flames and lightning. They clashed and wore each other down. Lei Juyo held the lightning rod and attacked. There was light in Yi Guchen's eyes, and the blood hell sword in his hand released a shocking sword light. He fought with Lei Juyo again. Flames, lightning, rod shadows, and sword light intertwined and burst out with a roar. The entire space shook, and the cone-like rocks fell from the top of the cave. In an instant, they were turned into dust by the flames and lightning. At the moment of the fight, there were two pitch-black sparks in Yi Guchen's eyes. When Lei Juyo saw the pitch-black flames, he was shocked. The scene in front of him changed, and Lei Juyo, who was covered in blood, appeared in front of him. "Lei Juyo, why didn't you take revenge for me? Why didn't you kill Sword Sect? I know that you are useless. You are not fit to be my brother." The curses entered Lei Juyo's mind, and he hesitated. When Yi Guchen saw it, he moved his feet and the sword light swept out. Lei Juyo quickly came back to his senses, and he could not dodge in time. His shoulder was grazed and blood splattered. Damn it. It is the heart demon fire of the extinguishing heart demon flame. Blood flowed out from the corner of Lei Juyo's mouth, and he looked ferocious. The extinguishing heart demon flame could trigger the heart demon fire and cause Lei Juyo's divine soul to be in a trance. On the other side, Yi Guchen also felt that after using the heart demon flame, his soul power was greatly depleted. It seems that using this move consumes a lot of soul power. Fortunately, I have broken through to the perfect sea of consciousness. Otherwise, I would not be able to use this move. Yi Guchen thought to himself. He opened his mouth again and said, "Aren't you curious why I attacked you in the valley?" Lei Juyo's expression froze. He was also curious. He had no enmity with Five Crown King. Why would Five Crown King attack him and stop him from taking revenge on Sword Sect Talon? "Although you are going to die, before you die, you will know who killed you." After Yi Guchen said that, he stomped his foot, and a terrifying blood-red sword intent spread out. At the same time, a vigorous golden true chi surged out from Yi Guchen's extreme sea of chi. This is true chi. Lei Juyo was stunned because of the extreme shock. God-slaying sword technique, Yama. Golden true chi poured into the blood hell sword. Behind Yi Guchen, the shadow of Yama appeared. A sword slashed across the sky. The blood-red sword light seemed to want to split the surroundings. Even the flames and lightning were cut apart. True Qi, sword technique, sword intent. Could it be that you are? Lei Juyo's eyes were filled with extreme shock. He wanted to see through Yiguchen. I am Yiguchen from the sword sect. After he said that, the blood-red sword light filled the sky. Lei Juyo hurriedly used a move to block it. The shock on his face could not be concealed. Sword sect, 5 Crown King. When the two identities were combined into one, the two of them became one. No one could remain calm. If this spread out, it would cause a huge uproar among the 7 major forces and the barbarian tribe. Chapter 567. Bang! There was a loud crash. Lei Juyo held the thunder rod in his hand and swept across the sky, colliding with the bloody hell sword. However, the god-slaying sword principle that was supported by Azura sword essence was extremely powerful. Even Lei Juyo took a few steps back and coughed out blood. However, the shock in his heart caused his face to freeze. When Yiguchen revealed his identity as 5 Crown King, although he was shocked, he wasn't too surprised. Now, Yiguchen had once again revealed his identity as a sword master. This caused Lei Juyo to be extremely shocked. An outsider with a primogenitor totem, one of the 5 primogenitor totems, had become the 5 Crown King. If the news spread, it would definitely shock the barbarian tribe, and even 5 Elements Temple would be shocked. No, how is that possible? I don't believe it. You are an outsider. How can you become the 5 Crown King of the barbarian tribe? Lei Juyo shook his head madly and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Moreover, Yiguchen had killed his brother, Lei Jioming. Hence, he had formed an irreconcilable grudge. It's just an opportunity. Yiguchen looked indifferent. He activated his genuine Qi and totem power at the same time. The 5 ancestor totems suppressed Lei Juyo's sky-devouring thunderous beast totem. His aura and cultivation base were suppressed by at least 30%. It was extremely fatal. Yiguchen's eyes flashed and he activated the sword essence in his body again. Boom! Along with the sword essence that soared into the sky, an illusory primordial sacred mountain appeared in midair. The surrounding space was slightly distorted as though gravity had changed. It was the sword realm of edgeless sword essence, gravity sword realm. The moment the gravity sword realm appeared, Lei Juyo felt his body being suppressed again. It was as though there was a 5 elements mountain on his shoulder and he was under constant pressure. The ancestor totem and the gravity sword realm suppressed Lei Juyo's power by at least 50%. It was extremely terrifying. Damn it. Lei Juyo's face was extremely gloomy. Sword Master, 5 Crown King, just one identity was enough to make it difficult for him to deal with. Not to mention the fact that Yiguchen had unleashed his full strength. With the 2 types of energy complementing each other, his strength had skyrocketed. Even a true minor profound martial realm expert wouldn't be able to suppress him. I'm not convinced. Pay with your life for my younger brother. Lei Juyo bellowed. The veins on his neck bulged. It was obvious that he was going to use his ultimate skill. Bloodline of the Thunder God. Lei Juyo was practically burning his own bloodline. As the bloodline of the Thunder God was fully activated, streaks of lightning energy shot out of his body, forming a silver armor on the surface of his body. Lightning shot out from his eyes. Chi-la! Lei Juyo's figure flashed like lightning as he charged towards Yiguchen. This was with the suppression of the gravity sword domain. Otherwise, Lei Juyo's speed would be even faster. Great Void Sword Wave. Yiguchen held the Blood Hell Sword in his hand and resonated with the void. Within the range of the gravity sword domain, the power of the Great Void Sword Wave was even stronger. Streaks of sword wave spread out and crushed the surrounding rocks into dust. When the lightning and the sword wave collided, there were ripples. Yiguchen took a few steps back and felt his arm go numb. Apparently, after Lei Juyo had activated the bloodline of the Thunder God, the power of the lightning had increased tremendously. However, Lei Juyo wasn't having a good time either. He was hit by the sword wave again and spat out blood. Thunder God's descent. Lei Juyo bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood essence in front of him. The blood essence carried traces of lightning energy and changed in the air. In the end, it turned into a seal and fell between Lei Juyo's eyebrows. Suddenly, Lei Juyo's body was filled with lightning runes and his body expanded like a balloon. Ha! Yi Guchen was stunned. The Thunder God's descent was similar to Yi Guchen's form after he had activated the Ancient God skill. However, compared to the Ancient God skill, Lei Juyo's was obviously a fake. If so, let me show you what a real God's descent is like. Yi Guchen activated the Ancient God skill in his body. In an instant, his body grew taller and ancient runes filled the air. At the same time, a faint star mark appeared between his eyebrows. No, how is this possible? This is the form of the ancestor. Lei Juyo opened his eyes wide. Yi Guchen's trump cards were endless. Then, he had revealed the form of the ancestor of the barbarian tribe. Thunderstorm 9 Heavens. Lei Juyo burned his body and activated it with all his might. Even the sky-devouring thunderbolt beast exploded into a ball of lightning and was absorbed by Lei Juyo. His 3 exotic thunders, Blood Soul Demonic Thunder, Dark Sky Thunder and 9 Dragons Dark Thunder were all absorbed by him. Lei Juyo's body seemed to have turned into a thunderbolt and he charged towards Yi Guchen. It could be said that even if Tuoba Shang was there, he would not be able to block it easily. Yi Guchen covered his body with the heavenly demon general armor. At the same time, he held the blood hell sword in his ancient god body and attacked. God-slaying sword skill, Permitha. As the sword slashed out, crimson-red Permitha flowers bloomed in the void. Moreover, Yi Guchen's body was still in the form of an ancient god and it was enhanced with terrifying power. Bang! The collision caused the entire lightning fire ancient cave to rumble. It was as if the world had been turned upside down. Lei Juyo was sent flying and his mouth was filled with blood. He wanted to take advantage of the aftermath of the collision to escape. Yi Guchen, you're dead meat. Spread the news and you won't be able to walk out of the door of the ancient god. Lei Juyo roared as he escaped. Do you think you can leave? Yi Guchen looked indifferent as he activated his sea of consciousness. A terrifying soul power gushed out and hit Lei Juyo's sea of consciousness. He felt dizzy and his 7 orifices started to bleed again. At the same time, the meteorite demonic butterfly released the soul-breaking star needle and pierced it into Lei Juyo's sea of consciousness. When it exploded, Lei Juyo's body shook and his speed decreased drastically. Reincarnation Sword Lotus. Yi Guchen raised one of his hands and boundless sword chi gathered in his palm and turned into a beautiful golden lotus. He flicked his finger and the golden lotus hit Lei Juyo's body. In an instant he was wrapped up. As the sword lotus spun, he was cut into pieces and blood splattered. In just a few breaths' time, the holy son of the Thunder Tribe died on the spot and turned into a pile of flesh and bones. Lei Juyo is not weak. Yi Guchen wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. Just now, Lei Juyo's thunderstorm 9 heavens had also caused some injuries to him. Fortunately, Lei Juyo had not completely broken through the life and death challenge. Otherwise, it would be more troublesome to deal with him. Lei Juyo's death was a huge shock to the barbarian tribe. However, Yi Guchen looked indifferent as if he did not think that he had done anything serious. Let's leave this place. Yi Guchen's body flew out. Outside the lightning fire ancient cave, the wooden bell spirit had been waiting for a long time. She looked anxious. She had also sensed the rumbles coming from the lightning fire ancient cave. However, her body was of the wood attribute and it was difficult for her to enter the ancient cave that was filled with strange fire and lightning. Hence, she could only wait outside. Just as the wooden bell spirit's face changed, Yi Guchen walked out of the ancient cave. Dugawubai, you finally come out. Let's leave quickly. The Mulan Saintess sent news that they've arrived outside the Tomb of the Gods and Devils and are confronting the Tuoba camp. The situation isn't good. However, the Tomb of the Gods and Devils might really be open this time, said the wooden bell spirit. Let's go. Yi Guchen said. Chapter 568. The tomb of the divines and demons was located in the deepest part of the door of the ancient god. It was also the place with the most precious opportunities. Although the door of the ancient god had opened many times in the past, no one had been able to enter the tomb of the divines and demons. The last time someone entered the tomb of the divines and demons was a long time ago. It was also after the opening of the mausoleum that the legendary five-crown king appeared in the barbarian race. Therefore, if the tomb of the divines and demons opened, it meant that another powerful person would appear in the barbarian race. It was a sign of the barbarian race's rise. This time around, when the door of the ancient god opened, the person who had high hopes and could enter the tomb of the gods and devils was naturally Tuoba Shang. At this moment, in the deepest part of the door of the ancient god, there was a piece of land. The entire land looked as if it was dyed in blood. It was dark red in color. In the deepest part of the land, there was a mysterious tomb shrouded in dense black fog. The tomb was in ruins and the tombstones were in ruins. It looked like an ancient land that had been sealed for a long time. This was the tomb of the divines and demons. Outside the tomb of the divines and demons, there were two parties facing each other. One of the parties was covered in blood and panting. It was obvious that they were at a disadvantage. It was the Muron family's camp. However, at this moment, the Muron family's camp looked carefully. There were only Muron Yu, Muron Xiao, Muron Fong, Muron Sun, Long Nu, Shui Ruo, White Lion Saint, and Black Tiger Saint. On the other side, the Tuoba family's camp included Tuoba Shang, Tuoba Lai, and the others. There were more than 10 people from the Tuoba family alone. In addition, there were external reinforcements such as the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and Mo Yi. There were more than 20 people from the Tuoba family's camp. The strength of the two camps was not equal. There was a huge gap between them. Tuoba Shang, no matter what, you are still a quadruple crown king. How could you do such a despicable thing? You attacked us one by one before we even gathered. Mu Lanyue's pretty face was ashen as she stared at the indifferent Tuoba Shang. She gritted her teeth so hard that they almost shattered. After the two parties entered the door of the ancient god, they were going to search for opportunities and enter the tomb of the divines and demons. However, to their surprise, Tuoba Shang led some of his subordinates and took the initiative to kill some of the people from the Mulan family's camp. As a result, only 8 people remained from the Mulan family's camp. The winner takes all. This time, whoever obstructs me from obtaining the ancestors' inheritance will die. Tuoba Shang's tone was extremely cold and firm. It was as if he had a strong conviction. This time, Tuoba Shang had made up his mind to become the young king. Whoever stood in his way, he would mercilessly crush them. Sensing the determination and killing intent in Tuoba Shang's words, Mu Lanyue's expression changed slightly. This time, Tuoba Shang's determination was too great. No one could stop him. But for some reason, Yi Guqin's figure suddenly appeared in Mu Lanyue's mind. He said he could deal with Tuoba Shang. It would be great if that was true. Mu Lanyue sighed. The current situation was extremely bad for the Muron family. Even the lion and tiger sages, who had been arrogant and boastful before, had to back down at this moment, not daring to be in the limelight. Their expressions kept changing as they looked at each other. Just when the situation was extremely dangerous for the Muron family, 2 wind-breaking sounds suddenly sounded. Everyone looked over and saw the wooden bell spirit and Yi Guqin. Mu Lanyue's eyes were filled with joy. With the addition of these two, their situation would be slightly better. On the other side, Tuoba Shang frowned slightly, but that was all. With his current cultivation, he didn't even care about the Triple Crown champion. Naturally, he didn't care about the Wooden Bell Spirit and the others. Moreover, even if the Wooden Bell Spirit and Yi Guqin came, the Muron family only had 10 people in total. On the Tuoba family's side, there were over 20 people. In terms of numbers, they were twice as many as the Muron family. Moreover, in terms of quality, the Tuoba family still had the advantage. Mu Lanyue, if you retreat now, I can spare your life. You should know that with me around, you won't be able to obtain the ancestors' inheritance. Tuoba Shang's tone was as cold as ice. Although he didn't care about Mu Lanyue and the others, If they fought, their side would suffer great losses. There were still all kinds of dangers in the tomb of the divines and devils. Tuoba Shang, what's the point of saying this now? It's impossible for us to retreat. Mu Lanyue naturally wouldn't retreat just because of Tuoba Shang's words. Tuoba Shang's expression turned serious, as if he wanted to attack. At this moment, the Golden Sun Saint suddenly stepped forward and said in a low voice, Lei Jiuyo isn't here. Where did he go? Tuoba Shang frowned. Lei Jiuyo was considered the top combat power on their side, but he still hadn't come. If you're waiting for Lei Jiuyo, then don't bother. He'll never come. Yi Guchen said lightly. At this moment, the people from both sides gathered their attention on Yi Guchen. The meaning of this sentence was obvious. Lei Jiuyo was dead. As for who killed him, it was obvious from his tone. You mean you killed Lei Jiuyo? The Golden Sun Saint's tone was faint with a trace of disbelief. Lei Jiuyo was the same as him. He had obtained the life and death intent, and his strength was much stronger than before. If this young man in front of him had killed Lei Jiuyo, wouldn't that mean that he could kill him too? How could the Golden Sun Saint believe it? The people from Tuoba Shang's side sneered. Tuoba Shang didn't even look at Yi Guchen. However, Mo Yi took a deep look at Yi Guchen. Not only Tuoba Shang's side, but Mu Lanyue's side was also shocked. What? You killed Lei Jiuyo? Mu Lanyue's tone was a trace of surprise. I think he's boasting again. When the time comes, we'll just let him deal with Tuoba Shang. The Lion and Tiger Saints sneered, as if they didn't believe it. Mu Lanxuan also shook her head. Now that they were in a bad situation, Yi Guchen was still boasting. He really didn't understand the situation. On the other hand, the noisy Mu Lanfang wanted to say something, but when she saw Yi Guchen's cold eyes, she shut her mouth bitterly. In fact, she didn't believe it either. However, she had seen Yi Guchen kill Tuoba Shang and the others with her own eyes, so she didn't dare to say anything at this moment. Only the wooden bell spirit looked at Yi Guchen with her green eyes. Although she was shocked, she believed it. Could it be that the fluctuation in the lightning fire ancient cave was him fighting with Lei Jiuyo? The wooden bell spirit guessed. Tuoba Shang, we haven't even entered the tomb of the divinity and you want to fight to the death? There are endless dangers in the tomb of the divinity and devil, and there are also humanoid apes. If you kill us all, you'll lose a layer of skin. Mu Lanyue shouted. Now that things had come to this, she couldn't give up. She could only use this as a threat. Tuoba Shang's face changed slightly. Indeed, there were more troublesome existences in the tomb of the divinity and devil. If Tuoba Shang killed them now, even if he could kill everyone in the Mulan camp, he would lose more than half of his people. At that time, it would be difficult to enter the tomb of the divinity and devil, and the loss would outweigh the gain. Mu Lanyue, I'll give you a chance to live. Tuoba Shang said and led his people into the tomb of the divinity and devil. The people in the Mulan camp would help him share some of the pressure. Who's using who? It's impossible for you to obtain the ancestors' inheritance and become the young king. Mu Lanyue said firmly. If Tuoba Shang became the young king of the barbarian tribe, it would be the end of the Mulan family. Let's go in. Mu Lanyue waved her hand, and Yi Guchen and the others followed. Chapter 569. Inside the tomb of the gods and devils, the atmosphere was gloomy and black fog surged. Yi Guchen followed Mu Lanyue and the others into the tomb. He felt that the ancient god tactic in his body was involuntarily circulating. I wonder if I can find the opportunity to break through to one-star ancient god in the tomb of the gods and devils? Yi Guchen thought to himself. He was at most a half-star ancient god. Although his power increased a lot after he transformed into the ancient god form, he could not use the special techniques of the ancient god clan. If he could really become a one-star ancient god, then Yi Guchen would be able to use some of the techniques of the ancient god clan and his power would increase again. The people from the Tuoba and Mu Lanyue camps moved forward cautiously and vigilantly. Not long after, they gradually went deep into the tomb of the gods and devils. But they had not completely entered, because it was rumored that the real opportunity was in the core area, inside a large tomb. As for the outer perimeter, Most of them were broken walls and ruins. As they ventured deeper, the black demonic chi drifting in the air grew increasingly dense. Suddenly, a thick cloud of demon chi floated in front of them. Everyone be careful. Quickly use your totem power to protect your body. Mu Lanyue shouted in a low voice. Hearing this, the people around her burst out their totem power and released balls of light to protect their bodies. On the other side, the Tuoba family did the same. But there was one person who could not protect himself in time. The black demon chi had completely enveloped them. Tuoba Lung. Tuoba Shang frowned and the others quickly scattered. It was too late to release their totem power. Tuoba Lung suddenly knelt on the ground and wailed. He crazily scratched his body as if he was going to tear off his skin and flesh. Finally, Tuoba Lung's eyes were bright red like blood in front of everyone's shocked gazes. He suddenly raised his head and let out a wild roar. Thick black hair emerged from all over his body. His body swelled and in an instant, he turned into a monster that looked like a black ape. Seeing this scene, everyone present felt a chill in their hearts. Although they had some understanding of it before, it was a living person that had turned into a monster right before their eyes. This sort of shock could not be said to be small. Roar! Tuoba Lang, who had transformed into a black ape, stretched out his claws and attacked the Golden Sun Saint Sun. The Golden Sun Saint threw out a punch. The metal-type totem power surged and his fist was even harder than metal. However, when the fist landed on the ape that Tuoba Lang had transformed into, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. What a tough body! The Golden Sun Saint was also stunned. The strength of this ape's physical body was beyond his expectations. At this moment, Tuoba Shang's body flashed and he threw out a flaming demon tyrant fist. It directly pierced through the ape's chest and killed it. Seeing this, Mu Lanyue and the others became vigilant again. However, it didn't take long for many howls to be heard from within the black fog. Vaguely, there were some pitch-black figures flashing in the devil chi. Oh no, everyone be careful. Those apes are coming. Mu Lanyue's expression changed. Numerous figures shot out from within the black fog just as her voice sounded. Every single one of them carried an incomparably ferocious aura. They were humanoid apes with blood-red eyes and pitch-black fur all over their bodies. These apes were the barbarian tribe saints and saintesses who had been assimilated by the devil chi after entering the tomb of the divines and demons. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the troops from both camps began to engage in a chaotic battle with the demonized apes. A humanoid ape charged at Yiguchen. It stretched out its sharp claws, which were like sharp knives. It could even tear the armor of a divine spiritual inscription weapon into pieces. Even a spiritual inscription divine weapon armor would be left with deep cracks under the claws. Yiguchen activated his totem power and fought with the demonized ape. This body has been tempered by the devil chi and is even harder than metal. Although it still can't compare to my body, Yiguchen thought to himself. Although the demonized ape's body couldn't compare to his, Yiguchen's body couldn't be measured by common sense. His body was even more monstrous than a monster's. Of course, the demonized ape's body was several times stronger than the barbarians who had trained their bodies since childhood. What kind of existence is this devil chi? It can actually make people change like this. Yiguchen also felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. He once again punched the demonized ape's body, producing a dull metallic sound. The demonized ape only let out a howl before charging forward again. Yiguchen frowned slightly and directly activated his perfect knowledge C. His fierce soul power condensed into a soul flow and bombarded the demonized ape. However, to Yiguchen's surprise, the demonized ape wasn't affected at all. It doesn't have a knowledge C? Yiguchen revealed a look of surprise. Logically speaking, as long as it was a living creature, even if it hadn't condensed a knowledge C, it should have soul power. However, this demonic ape had an empty skull and was already a corpse-like existence. Without a knowledge C, Yiguchen's soul attack was naturally useless. It seems that everything is because of the devil chi, Yiguchen thought to himself. His heart moved and a light bulb flashed in his mind. He secretly activated the ancient god tactic in his body, and traces of ancient god power spread out. Yiguchen once again punched out, and with the ancient god power, it collided with the demonized ape. Bang! The result of this collision was different. The demonized ape let out a shrill scream. The place where Yiguchen's fist hit was emitting black gas as if it had been corroded. It was easily penetrated by Yiguchen's fist. It's indeed useful. Yiguchen's eyes lit up. It seemed that the ancient god tactic was the best way to restrain the devil chi. Moreover, only Yiguchen had such a method. No one else, including Tooba Shang, had such a method. This meant that Yiguchen would have the advantage in the tomb of the gods and devils. At this moment, Yiguchen's gaze was attracted by the commotion not far away. He saw the dragoness protecting Shui Ruo as they were surrounded by 3 demonized apes. As for the others, they were all entangled by the demonized apes. They couldn't even protect themselves, let alone help the dragoness. As for Shui Ruo, although she tried her best to help, her strength was still limited. Yiguchen's footsteps flashed, and he directly rushed to the dragoness's side. One of the demonized apes stretched out its sharp claws and clawed at the dragoness's head. The dragoness's expression suddenly changed. At this critical moment, Yiguchen's fist came and collided with the demonized ape's claw. Under the dragoness's astonished gaze, the demonized ape's entire arm was directly shattered by Yiguchen. "You've become stronger again." The dragoness's eyes were filled with joy as she sighed. Yiguchen nodded slightly. His strength had indeed become stronger, but more importantly, it was the power of the ancient god tactic that could restrain the devil chi. Just after Yiguchen helped the dragoness and Shui Ruo out of danger, Mu Lanyue's voice sounded again. "Everyone, follow me into the depths of the tomb of the gods and devils. We can't delay here." Yiguchen, the dragoness, and the others' eyes flickered as they followed Mu Lanyue's footsteps. On the other side, Tooba Shang led his subordinates and began to break out of the encirclement. After a fierce struggle, Yiguchen and the others finally broke out of the encirclement of the devil chi. The surroundings became clear in an instant, and the scene in front of them shocked Yiguchen. Chapter 570. What appeared in front of Yiguchen was a huge mausoleum. It was huge because it was hundreds of feet high and hundreds of feet wide. It was more like an ancient mountain than a mausoleum. It was impossible for it to be an ordinary mausoleum. The entire mausoleum was pitch black and stained with mottled dark red blood. Innumerable images of primordial times and totems of savage beasts were engraved on it. There were also some towering giants holding the sun, the moon, and the stars. They were the ancient god clan. This is the real tomb of gods and demons. All the barbarian holy sons and holy daughters were amazed. This huge mausoleum was where the true opportunity of the entire door of the ancient god was. All the other treasures and opportunities could not be compared to this mausoleum. Those are the ancestors of my barbarian tribe. Mu Lanyue looked at the giants and couldn't help but be fascinated, holding a star in his hand and cracking the earth with a stomp. What kind of supreme might was that? Even though they knew that these giants were their ancestors, they did not know who they were. Only Yiguchen knew something about the ancient god clan after he got the information from the 5-colored golden core. But Wan Yanlan and the others should know some secrets about the ancient god clan, Yiguchen thought. After they entered the tomb of gods and demons, the demonized apes only flashed in the black fog in the distance and screeched. They did not dare to leave the demon chi and approach the tomb of gods and demons as if they were afraid of this place. While everyone was shocked by the majesty of the tomb of gods and demons, Yiguchen noticed that there were some images engraved on it. They were the ancient god clan's pitch-black demonized apes fighting. The pitch-black demonized apes were also like ancient mountains. They held long sticks and fought with the ancient god clan. Is that the ancient god clan's opponent, the source of the demon chi? Yiguchen looked at the pitch-black demonized apes and did not have any clue. "Let's go in," Mu Lanyue said. Now, both sides had suffered some losses after the previous battle. Although no one from the Mu Lan's camp died, they were all injured. On the other hand, a few people from Tooba's camp had died. The remaining people were also injured. Although Tuoba Shang wanted to get rid of Mu Lanyue and the others, he was powerless to do so. If he made a move, there wouldn't be many people left on his side. Moreover, the Golden Sun Saint's son and the other foreign aide wouldn't be 100% loyal to him. Moreover, Tuoba Shang had to preserve his strength, and it was naturally impossible for him to go all out at this moment if he wanted to seize the fortune within the tomb of fiend gods. The two sides faced each other before slowly moving towards the tomb of the gods and devils. The entrance to the tomb of the fiend gods was an enormous door that was like the enormous mouth of a primeval beast. It was pitch black and emitted a ghastly aura. However, no one was willing to leave after coming here. If they fought with their lives on the line, they might be able to survive. They might even be able to obtain a fortuitous encounter and become a young king. Therefore, no one was willing to give up. Everyone entered the tomb of the gods and devils. The moment Yi Guchen stepped into the mausoleum, the surrounding light seemed to be swallowed up. The surroundings were terrifyingly quiet, and only the footsteps of the saints and saintesses could be heard. At this moment, a huge door suddenly appeared in front of them. It was also 100 feet tall and was somewhat similar to the door of the ancient gods. However, the door was closed and carved with various ancient patterns, reliefs, and totems. This is the entrance to the tomb of the gods and devils. However, no one has been able to enter all this time. The last time someone entered was when the Five-Crown King was still alive. Some saints said. The Five-Crown King naturally wasn't Yi Guchen, but the previous Five-Crown King. Damn it, how do we enter? Tuoba Shang stood in front of the door and stretched out his palm. He activated the totem power in his body as if he wanted to use his bloodline to sense and open the door of the mausoleum. Meanwhile, Yi Guchen was hidden at the side, sizing up the door of the mausoleum. At this moment, Yi Guchen's sharp eyes suddenly noticed that there seemed to be a circular sunken pattern in a corner of the door. He quietly moved to Yi Guchen's side. The rest of the people were either sizing up the door or observing Tuoba Shang's movements. Therefore, no one noticed Yi Guchen. Could this be? He looked at the sunken pattern. Yi Guchen suddenly understood and quietly took out a piece of ancient jade carved with the pattern of the 5 divine beasts. Yi Guchen had obtained 2 items from the corpse of the mysterious barbarian race elite in the bottomless demon abyss. They were the 5-colored golden core and the 5 divine beasts ancient jade. Yi Guchen was almost certain that the corpse of the barbarian race elite belonged to the legendary 5-crown king of the barbarian race. Yi Guchen had never understood the use of the 5 divine beasts ancient jade. Now, it seemed that Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as he quietly pressed the 5 divine beasts ancient jade into the sunken pattern. Rumble. A moment later, the door that had been silent all this time suddenly opened. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on Tuoba Shang at the first moment. It really is Tuoba Shang. He succeeded. Tuoba Shang can open the door of the tomb with his own bloodline. Could it be that he is the chosen successor of the ancestors? It seems that Tuoba Shang will be the young king this time. Some of the saints exclaimed when they saw that Tuoba Shang could open the door. On the other hand, Mu Lanyue and the others in the Mulan camp were extremely upset. Didn't this mean that Tuoba Shang was the chosen one? In the corner, Yi Guchen also put away the 5 divine beasts ancient jade after opening the door of the tomb. His intuition told him that the 5 divine beasts ancient jade was not just a key to opening the door. The funny thing was that Tuoba Shang actually thought that the door of the tomb was opened because of his bloodline. Ha, I told you. I am the successor of the 5-crown king, the successor of the ancestors. No one's bloodline is better than mine. Tuoba Shang looked up to the sky and laughed. As soon as the door of the tomb opened, everyone rushed in. Almost at the same time, the first elder, Wanyan Lan, who was sitting quietly outside the door, suddenly opened his eyes. His old face, which had always been expressionless, changed greatly. The tomb of the fiend gods has opened. The young king is about to be born. Wanyan Lan's old voice echoed around the door of the ancient god. The patriarchs of the surrounding tribes, Tuoba Outyan, Malambo, and the others were also shocked. The tomb of the fiend gods has really opened. Tuoba Shang is indeed the young king chosen by the heavens. A middle-aged man beside Wan Yanlan said loudly. He was the famous barbarian king of the Five Elements Temple. He had been Tuoba Shang's guardian and had fought with Feng Manlu before. His strength was considered to be in the upper echelons of the divine dwelling stage. Enter! Wan Yanlan could no longer sit still. He led the many elders of the Five Elements Temple and entered the door of the ancient god at almost the same time. The chiefs and elders of the various clans also followed closely behind and entered the door of the ancient god. This was a huge matter for the barbarian race. Chapter 571. Just as Wan Yanlan and the others entered the door of the ancient god. Inside the door of the ancient god, in the valley of 10,000 medicine, 100 flower child, who had been sitting cross-legged in the cave, suddenly opened her eyes. Her bright eyes flashed with extreme joy. The tomb of the fiend gods has opened. There's hope to get the reversal source fruit. 100 flower child almost impatiently rushed out of the valley of 10,000 medicine. But in the next moment she felt many powerful auras pouring in from outside the door of the ancient god. Damn it, it's Wan Yanlan and those old bastards. 100 flower child's pretty little face scrunched up. The next moment, she completely concealed her aura and rushed to the depths of the tomb of the fiend gods at an extremely fast speed. On the other side, Wan Yanlan and the others, who had entered the door of the ancient god, also rushed to the tomb of the fiend gods without stopping for a moment. The door of the ancient god was neither big nor small. But with the cultivation of Wan Yanlan and the others, they arrived at the periphery of the tomb of the fiend gods in less than 15 minutes. Let's go in quickly. Tuoba Outyen wanted to enter directly. Stop. The demonic chi in the tomb of the fiend gods is stronger than the strong. If we enter, the powerful corrosive force will immediately demonize us. Wan Yanlan shouted when he saw that Tuoba Outyen was about to enter. The mysterious tomb was filled with demonic chi. The stronger one's cultivation, the easier it was to be affected and assimilated. So in the past, when the door of the ancient god opened, it was almost always the chosen and saintesses of the divine soul stage who entered. At this stage, they were not particularly weak and would not be easily affected and assimilated by the demonic chi. Of course, if they were directly exposed to the demonic chi, there was nothing they could do. Like Tuobalung, they would directly turn into an ape. Then how should we judge? Some of the patriarchs of the large clans asked. The opening of the tomb of the fiend gods was not a small matter. It would affect the future structure of the barbarian race. They naturally wanted to know the situation as soon as possible. Don't worry, let me open it. Wan Yanlan and the several divine dwelling stage elders in the Five Elements Temple began to form hand seals. Rays of five-colored divine light rose from the bodies of Wan Yanlan and the other elders. They vaguely resonated with some of the incomplete formations in the tomb of the fiend gods. Soon after, the five-colored brilliance condensed into a screen of light in midair. The screen showed the situation inside the tomb of the gods and demons. The door to the mausoleum has indeed opened. Tuoba Shang used his own bloodline to sense it and created a resonance. That's why he was able to open the door. He is indeed the best inheritor of our ancestors' bloodline. Beside Wan Yanlan, a red-robed old man was so excited that his face turned red. He was the grand elder of the Tuoba family. Naturally, he was willing to see Tuoba Shang become the young lord. On the other side, the Mulan family's supreme elder, the cyan-gowned old man, had a serious expression on his face. He did not utter a single word. Although he also wanted to refute that statement, seeing was believing. That was indeed the situation on the screen of light. Outside the mausoleum of gods and devils, all the important figures of the barbarian race were staring at the screen of light. Inside the mausoleum, the door opened. Everyone looked at Tuoba Shang in a different light. Yiguchen did not say a word after retrieving the 5 divine beasts jade. Now that he had not obtained the sacred medicine, Yiguchen did not want to reveal too much. Since Tuoba Shang had stepped forward to cover for him, it couldn't be any better. Enter. Tuoba Shang was in high spirits as if he had already become the young lord. Behind him, Tuoba Lai and the others also felt proud. On the contrary, the Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaotian, and the others did not look too good. Although they were also Tuoba Shang's subordinates, they were as ambitious as Lei Jiuyo. If possible, they all wanted to become the young lord. However, now that Tuoba Shang's bloodline could open the door of the mausoleum, their hopes were greatly extinguished. Both parties entered the mausoleum carefully. The space inside the mausoleum was quite spacious. It was like a beehive with many tomb passages. However, these tomb passages all led to the same destination. In the end, they all led to the deepest part of the mausoleum of gods and devils. Enter! The saints and saintesses rushed into the tomb passages. However, different tomb passages contained different things. There might be some opportunities and treasures, but there might also be many hidden dangers. There should be some opportunities in these tomb passages. You can search for them separately, but be careful. Remember to gather together in the end, Mu Lanyue said. Yi Guchen and the others nodded slightly. Shui Ruo and Dragon Girl would naturally follow Yi Guchen. What surprised Yi Guchen was that the wooden bell spirit also chose to follow him. On the other side, when Mu Lanxuan saw this, he frowned and said, Sister Yu, the wooden bell spirit dragon lady and the others actually chose to follow Duguwubai instead of us. Could it be that they think that Duguwubai knows the situation in the tomb better than our Mu Lanxuan? Let's not bother about them. It's their problem if they don't get the opportunities. Mu Lanfang rolled her eyes. She was very vengeful. Yi Guchen and the wooden bell spirit did not give her any face in the Valley of 10,000 Medicine. Brother Dugu, which tomb passage should we choose? Shui Ruo looked at the densely packed tomb passages and was confused. Yi Guchen pondered for a moment. In the next moment, the soul power in his perfect sea of consciousness suddenly spread out. Now, the range of his divine soul's perception was at least 1,000 feet, far exceeding that of an ordinary person. If there were opportunities and treasures, Yi Guchen should be able to feel some movement. Follow me, Yi Guchen said. Dragon Girl, Shui Ruo, and the wooden bell spirit followed Yi Guchen into a tomb passage. Inside the tomb passage, there was also demonic qi spreading, but it was thicker than outside. If this goes on, we won't be able to hold on for long. The wooden bell spirit and the others did not look too good. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered. He secretly operated the ancient god tactic. Then, totem power gushed out and turned into an air shield, enveloping the four of them. When the pitch-black demonic qi touched the air shield, it immediately made a sizzling sound and was unable to corrode it. Dragon Girl and the wooden bell spirit's eyes flickered, but they were smart and did not say anything. Not long after, they found an opportunity. It was a tomb chamber where some ancestors of the barbarian tribe had fallen. There is a totem spiritual seal. Dragon Girl and the other two exclaimed in surprise. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly. The so-called totem spirit seal was an extremely rare inheritance. It was formed by the ancestors of the barbarian tribe who had extremely high cultivation. They gathered their totem power into a spirit seal. Even if they died in the end, the spirit seal could still be passed down to their descendants. If a double crown king refined a totem spiritual seal, he would become a triple crown king. Of course, such totem spiritual seals were extremely rare and almost extinct in the 5 Elements lands. Only in a place like the Tomb of the Gods and Devils could there be one. Yi Guchen and the others found a total of 6 totem spiritual seals, which meant that they could refine the 6 supreme totems. Take it. Yi Guchen shook his head slightly. He already had 5 progenitor totems, so these totem spiritual seals were of no use to him. Thank you. Dragon Girl knew Yi Guchen very well, so she did not stand on ceremony. Her pretty face was full of joy. The wooden bell spirit also looked at Yi Guchen gratefully. She had chosen the right person this time. If she had followed Mu Lanyue and the others, even if they could find the totem spiritual seals, she would not have a share. Next, Yi Guchen relied on his powerful spirit perception to find some opportunities, such as the mystical rune weapons left behind by the barbarian tribe's ancestors and some quasi-saint herbs. However, he did not find any saint herbs. Yiguchen's spirit perception faintly sensed that there was a powerful fluctuation hidden in the deepest part of the tomb of the gods and devils. Go straight to the deepest part of the tomb, Yiguchen said. Dragon Girl and the others nodded. They had obtained many opportunities this time. Chapter 572. Just as Yiguchen and the others rushed out of the tomb, Mulanue and the Tuoba family's camp also rushed out. However, they were in a much worse state with injuries all over their bodies. On Mulanue's side, Nurangxiu was missing. The rest, like Mulanfang and the others, were also covered in blood. Damn it! We didn't get the opportunity and Nurangxiu is also dead. Mulanfang's face was extremely ugly. The tomb they chose was extremely dangerous and filled with demonic qi. Even Nurangxiu died because of it. They didn't get any benefits and lost one of their people. However, the Tuoba family's camp was in a similar situation. Because the tomb's environment was complicated, their divine soul's range of perception was limited. Naturally, they couldn't avoid all the dangers. Mulanfang and Mulanxuan turned their attention to Yiguchen and the others again. Their gazes suddenly focused. Dragon Lady, Shui Ruo, and the Wooden Bell Spirit didn't look bad at all. Instead, they had smiles on their faces as if they had gained something big. The contrast was too obvious. What did you get? Mulanxuan asked coldly. He had previously questioned why the Wooden Bell Spirit and the others would rather follow Yiguchen than the Mulanxuan family. Now, it seemed that the two sides had formed a stark contrast. Sorry, it has nothing to do with you. You should think about how to deal with the Tuoba family. Dragon Lady smiled coldly at Mulanxuan, but she also seemed to be a little proud. Previously, Mulanxuan and the others looked down on Yiguchen, thinking that they wouldn't gain anything by following Yiguchen. Now, it was clear who was better and who was worse. Mulanfang was also furious. If it weren't for the fact that they had a common enemy, Mulanfang would have already spoken up. Alright, shut up. We need to be more united now, Mulanue shouted. She also looked at Yiguchen in surprise and felt a little regretful. If they had followed Yiguchen, perhaps Nurangxiu wouldn't have died. Almost everyone in the Mulanue and Tuoba families walked out of the tomb. At this moment, Yiguchen glanced around. This was an extremely large space. The ground was engraved with ancient patterns that seemed to form a ring. In the center of the ring, there were many stone coffins. Some of the stone coffins had already been opened and were in a mess, while others were still intact. Yiguchen sensed with his spirit that these stone coffins contained powerful energy fluctuations. There's a treasure inside the stone coffin. Not only Yiguchen but the others also sensed it. Of course, there were people who couldn't help but make a move. They directly rushed to the side of the stone coffins and wanted to open the coffin lids. However, after the coffin lid was opened, a terrifying demonic aura spread out like a geyser. The expert from the Tuoba camp who opened the coffin lid was directly attacked by the demonic aura and fell to the ground in pain, wailing endlessly. However, as the demonic qi surged out, a ball of light rose into the air and floated in midair, as if it was untainted by mud. One could vaguely see a fruit within. It was black and white, and it gave off a mysterious feeling. Sacred medicine! Everyone exclaimed as they stared at the ball of light. Sacred medicine was extremely rare and almost extinct in the outside world. However, it still existed in the tomb of the gods and devils. Compared to the others, Yiguchen's eyes were filled with shock. That's the reverse origin fruit. Yiguchen took a deep breath. 100 Flowers' child needed him to obtain the reverse origin fruit, so she naturally told Yiguchen some things. Without a doubt, the black and white fruits were the reversed source fruit. Boom! No one could bear it anymore. The totem power on the surface of their bodies spread out to resist the billowing demonic aura. They wanted to obtain the reverse origin fruit. No matter what the effects of a sacred medicine were, its value was enough to tempt everyone. Even the many brute race experts who were watching from the periphery through the 5-colored light screen were burning with desire. If it weren't for the demonic qi blocking them, they would have barged in and snatched the sacred medicine. However, they didn't know that in a sunken hill in the distance, There was a beautiful figure. Her eyes were also burning with desire, and her face was slightly flushed with excitement. Yiguchen, you must get the reverse origin fruit for me. 100 Flowers Child said in her heart as she clenched her fists. Inside the great tomb, all the saints and saintesses made their moves and rushed towards the reversal origin fruit. However, at this moment, a furious roar was emitted from the coffin filled with surging demonic chi. Soon after, a black figure flashed out and grabbed the chosens that were the first to charge towards the reverse origin fruit. A hand covered in black hair ruthlessly slammed against the chosen's head. With a puff, red and white objects shot out. A powerful holy sun had directly fallen. Not good. It's the demonic ape. Some of the saints hurriedly stopped. Within the black fog, the black figure was revealed. His body was even more robust than the demonic apes outside. His eyes were incomparably scarlet, and an extremely fiendish aura spread out, causing people to feel a chill. Divine Soul 9 Transformations. No, life and death chamber. This demonic ape is comparable to a life and death chamber expert. A saint said with a pale face. As soon as these words came out, everyone stopped in their tracks. That was the life and death chamber. Among all the people present, there were less than 10 people who could fight against it. Even exchanging blows with it was difficult, let alone defeating it. Roar! The powerful demonic ape that was comparable to a life and death chamber expert charged toward them. Yiguchen, Tuoba Shang, and the others' eyes flashed. They weren't too afraid of the life and death chamber. In addition, Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaodian, and the others were also qualified to exchange blows with the life and death chamber expert. At this moment, Tuoba Shang, Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaodian, and the others seemed to have a tacit understanding as they besieged the demonic ape. Yiguchen's eyes flashed, and his feet flashed as he rushed toward the reverse origin fruit. You're courting death. Tuoba Shang snorted coldly and punched out. An intense scarlet light shot out. It was the fire demon tyrant fist. Yiguchen sneered. At this point, he didn't need to hide his strength. He directly punched out and neutralized Tuoba Shang's move. Then he used wave-like subtle steps and arrived beside the reverse origin fruit, keeping it with one hand. Dugubai, do you want to die so much? Tuoba Shang and the others' eyes were scarlet. The demonic ape also turned around and looked at Yiguchen with a ferocious expression. At this moment, Yiguchen became the target of everyone. Just as Yiguchen and Tuoba Shang were confronting each other, the Saint Sons of Heaven and Earth's Saint Sons were also stunned. The other saints and saintesses were also unwilling to give up. They discovered that there were still a few stone coffins here. They didn't care and directly opened them. Demonic chi surged out from within. Inside each stone coffin was a demonic ape comparable to a life and death chamber realm expert. However, the opportunities were also enough to make people jealous. Light flickered in one of the stone coffins, and a saint herb appeared. This saint herb was shaped like a ginseng, and a strong medicinal fragrance vaguely formed a mini 7-colored dragon that coiled around the ginseng. Could that be the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng? Rumor has it that it's a healing saint herb that can heal the dead and bring bones back to life. Mu Lanyue's beautiful eyes widened, filled with disbelief. Of course, there was also a fiery gaze. Having the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng was like having an extra life. Who wouldn't be tempted? Seeing this, Yiguchen's eyes flickered. I want this 7-colored jade dragon ginseng. Whoever stops me will die. His words were like the judgment of the god of death. It was incomparably domineering and intimidating. Chapter 573. Anyone who tried to stop him would die. All the holy princes and holy virgins were slightly stunned when they heard this. They couldn't understand what qualifications a Triple Crown champion had to say such words. One must know that Tuoba Shang, the Quadruple Crown King, was present. Even if Tuoba Shang wasn't present, there was no lack of Triple Crown champions among the saints and saintesses. Not to mention Tuoba Shang's camp, even some people from Mulan's camp frowned. However, the current situation didn't give them much time to think. The few life and death threshold demonized apes had long been enraged and started attacking, especially one of the demonized apes. When it saw Yiguchen take the reversal origin fruit, it roared at Yiguchen with scarlet eyes. Tuoba Shang's eyes flickered. Don't worry about him for now. He's just a Triple Crown champion. How can he deal with life and death threshold? Let's go fight for the other opportunities first. As Tuoba Shang's words fell, the others also rushed toward the other treasures. Humph, just one demonized ape is enough to make you suffer. You want to fight with me for the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng? On the other side, Mu Lanfang sneered. She had always held a grudge against Yi Guchen. Now that she saw Yi Guchen being entangled by the demonic ape, she naturally would not let go of this opportunity. Immediately, many people joined the ranks of the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng. Even Mo Yi, Dragon Lady, and the others joined in. Courting death. Yi Guchen's eyes were cold. The 7-colored jade dragon ginseng was Su Jianshir's only hope of recovery. How could he give it up? No one could stop him. With a roar, the life and death threshold demonized ape stretched out its sharp black claws and clawed at Yi Guchen's head. Get lost. Yi Guchen raised his brows and his face froze. He directly activated the power of the 5 primogenitor totems in his body and the ancient god art. He punched at the demonized ape. When the two collided, a powerful force came from Yi Guchen's fist. Even with Yi Guchen's powerful physique, he was still forced to take a few steps back. However, in the eyes of others, this scene was somewhat shocking. That Duguwubai is actually able to contend with existences at the level of life and death chamber? Some saints and saintesses caught a glimpse of this from the corner of their eyes and were all astonished. Even the Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaodian, and the others were surprised. However, they were currently busy fighting for the opportunity and did not have the time to think that Yi Guchen was actually hiding his strength. The demonized ape attacked again. Black devil chi surged from its body, and its claws turned into fists. It was as if a single punch could shatter a mountain. Yi Guchen circulated the ancient god art in his body, and with the support of the 5 primogenitor totems, his strength also rose to a powerful level. This demonized ape only has a physical body comparable to a life and death threshold. It doesn't have a sea of consciousness, so it can't be considered a true life and death threshold. Yi Guchen repeatedly punched out, colliding with the demonized ape. Shocking chi waves burst out. Just a physical body comparable to a life and death threshold was not enough to scare Yi Guchen. This was because his physical body was not inferior to a life and death threshold expert. However, while Yi Guchen was fighting with the demonized ape, on the other side, a great battle had already begun around the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng and other supreme treasures. Moreover, the other demonized apes also joined the battle, fighting with Tuoba Shang, Mu Lanyue, and the others. The scene could be described as incomparably chaotic. Things might change if I delay. I must end this quickly. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as he looked at the demonized ape in front of him. With a flip of his wrist, the blood hell sword landed in his hand. Layers of bloody light also appeared on his body, turning into a sinister blood armor. With the saint elixir in front of him, Yi Guchen did not plan to hide his identity anymore. He directly revealed his identity as 5 Crown King. 5 Great Sword Intense, go! With a cold shout, the blood hell sword in Yi Guchen's hand swept out. 5 Great Sword Intense burst out at the same time, connecting with each other. Although they had yet to take shape, there was a hint of the 5-element Sword Intense. At the same time, Yi Guchen added the power of the 5 primogenitor totems and the ancient god power. All kinds of power burst out in an instant. A 5-colored sword light flashed, directly sweeping towards the demonized ape. With one slash, blood splattered. That demonized ape was neatly divided into 5 parts, and it couldn't be any more dead. A demonized ape whose body was comparable to the life and death threshold fell just like that. Silence, a deathly silence. Whether it was the saints and saintesses in the Great Tomb or the barbarian race experts watching through the 5-colored light screen, their gazes and expressions froze at this moment. The figure in the blood armor and holding the blood sword was imprinted in everyone's eyes, causing their expressions to change from frozen to shocked, then from shocked to horrified. Five-crown king, a saint stammered, his voice incomparably dry, his eyes bulging as he exclaimed in shock. What? Everyone was shocked, incomparable surprise and astonishment. Mu Lanyue's mind buzzed, countless voices reverberating in her mind, finally turning into the three words five-crown king. The person she thought about day and night, the person she wanted to rope in, she never thought that he would be right under her nose. Moreover, he had been ignored by her many times. Mu Lanfang and Mu Lanxuan's faces turned pale, as if they had seen a ghost. No, impossible, how could the five-crown king be him? Mu Lanfang shook her head, her delicate body trembling like a sieve. If she knew Yi Guqin was the five-crown king, Mu Lanfang would never have dared to provoke him. Thinking of her many provocations, and then thinking of Yi Guqin's words, "Your life is my charity." Mu Lanfang felt a chill surge in her heart, as if she had taken a trip to the gates of hell. The lion and tiger saints' expressions changed drastically. Thinking of how they had targeted Yi Guqin before, they were incomparably nervous. The dragoness reaction was the calmest, but Xue Ruo's eyes widened, filled with disbelief. The person she was curious about, the five-crown king, was actually Dugu Wubai. Xue Ruo felt like her brain was about to be fried, but more than that, she was glad that she had not underestimated Yi Guqin like Mo Tao. The wooden bell spirit was also shocked by Yi Guqin's identity, but there was a strange glow in her green eyes. Her intuition was right. Outside the God-fiend tomb, Yi Guqin's identity caused an uproar. Even Wan Yanlan, a top master of the barbarian tribe who was always calm and collected, showed a look of astonishment. Lord Tian Barbarian and the other experts of the Five Elements Temple were also shocked. Mu Lamba's expression froze, then he shook his head and laughed. What a great five-crown king, he actually managed to fool everyone. On the other hand, the faces of the Tuoba family were extremely ugly, especially Tuoba Aotian. They were the most unwilling to see the five-crown king, especially when he had appeared right under the nose of the Five Elements Temple. One could imagine that Wan Yanlan had many thoughts in his mind. As for the Water Tribe, needless to say, the tribe leader of the Water Tribe and the others were shocked, as Mo Tao was also among the crowd. However, at this moment he was paralyzed on the ground, trembling all over. He could not imagine that the ordinary wandering barbarian whom he had underestimated was actually the invincible five-crown king who had defeated Tuoba Shang. At this moment, everyone thought of this. Outside the Five Elements Temple, when they heard that Yi Guqin wanted to deal with Tuoba Shang alone, they had mocked him. Now, when the identity of the five-crown king was revealed, they felt a burning sensation on their faces, as if they had been slapped 10 times with great force. If the five-crown king was not qualified to deal with Tuoba Shang, dare I ask, who else is qualified? Chapter 574. Yi Guqin's identity as five-crown king had shocked everyone. The top powers of the barbarian tribe outside the tomb of the gods and devils could not hide their shock. Even the elders of the Five-Element Temple could not remain calm. Five-Crown King was the successor that the Five-Element Temple had been searching for. They had previously identified Tuoba Shang and had been trying their best to nurture him. They had even let the Sky Barbarian King be Tuoba Shang's guardian. This showed how much importance they placed on Tuoba Shang. However, now that the successor of Five-Crown King had appeared, some of the elders of the Five-Element Temple began to have second thoughts. The Grand Elder of the Tuoba family had a gloomy expression. Now that the real Five-Crown King had appeared, Tuoba Shang was no match for him. On the other hand, the Great Elder of the Mulan family rejoiced in Tuoba Shang's misfortune because Mulan Yu herself was no match for Tuoba Shang. In that case, the successor of Five-Crown King was able to suppress Tuoba Shang. Yi Guqin's identity as Five-Crown King had shocked everyone in the Great Tomb. Those who had mocked and ridiculed Yi Guqin were trembling slightly. Their hearts were filled with anxiety. Feng Xiaolan, the Golden Sun Saint's son, and the others stared at Yi Guqin. "I'm afraid that Lei Jiuyo has been killed by him." the Golden Sun Saint's son said after taking a deep breath. He had not believed Yiguchen and had thought that Yiguchen was boasting. Now that the identity of Five Crown King had been exposed, everyone thought that Lei Jiuyo had been killed by Yiguchen. Of course, Tuo Bashang was naturally the one with the most turbulent emotions. Tuo Bashang's expression was incomparably cold and fierce. He was like a wild wolf that was about to devour its prey. His gaze was almost fixed on Yiguchen. Five Crown King? You are Five Crown King and you have been hiding under our noses. Tuo Bashang's tone was as cold as ice. Losing to Yiguchen in the ancient desolate forbidden zone was a humiliation that Tuo Bashang would never be able to erase. Even their Tuoba family's scheme, which relied on the heavenly barbarian slaughtering spiritual array, was destroyed by Yiguchen. It was precisely for the sake of washing away this humiliation that Tuo Bashang risked his life to enter the life and death cave to temper himself. He wanted to transform himself again and then personally defeat Five Crown King. Now that his enemy was right in front of him, Tuo Bashang's anger was unimaginable. Five Crown King, I entered the life and death cave and experienced countless dangers to train so that I could step on you personally one day. I didn't expect that you would actually appear. Tuo Bashang's heart was burning with the desire to take revenge. He couldn't wait to kill Yiguchen immediately. Get out of my way. However, Yiguchen coldly shouted and ignored Tuo Bashang. He only wanted to obtain the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng. How dare you ignore me? Tuoba camp, listen up. Fight for the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng. Don't let Five Crown King get it. Tuo Bashang's eyes were burning with rage. He didn't expect that Yiguchen wouldn't even look at him. Instead, he only wanted to obtain the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng. This was a humiliation to him. Since you want it, I won't let you get it. Tuo Bashang's face was cold. Although the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and the others were wary of Yiguchen's strength, their current strength was not what it used to be. In addition, the demonized ape was disrupting the situation. Yiguchen's 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. He was a little overwhelmed. Let's attack too. Mu Lanyue's eyes flashed as she shouted. Since Five Crown King was in their camp, Mu Lanyue naturally wouldn't just stand by and watch Yiguchen be besieged. However, other than the Dragon Girl, Shui Ruo, and the Wooden Bell Spirit, the others, such as Mu Lanxuan and Mu Lanfang, didn't help. Instead, they wanted to obtain other opportunities. On the other hand, the Lion and Tiger Saints followed behind Mu Lanyue and attacked together. Boom, boom, boom. The whole scene became even more chaotic. The demonized ape's demonic chi, totem power, and various moves danced in the sky like dazzling fireworks. However, they also carried extreme destructive power. In the midst of this chaos, the White Lion Saint and Black Tiger Saint looked at each other and a fierce light flashed in their eyes. They directly launched a sneak attack on Mu Lanyue and the Dragon Girl. Oh no! No matter how fast Mu Lanyue and the Dragon Girl reacted, they barely had time to use their totem power to support a protective shield. How could they resist the Lion and Tiger Saint's attacks? 2 sounds of vomiting blood rang out. Mu Lanyue and the Dragon Girl were sent flying back at the same time. They were severely injured. Lion and Tiger Saints. Mu Lanyue was so angry that she almost broke her silver teeth. She didn't expect the Lion and Tiger Saints, whom she relied on the most, to launch a sneak attack on them. We have already joined the Tuoba family's camp. Mu Lanyue, even if Five Crown King is on your side, what can you do? The White Lion Saint said coldly. In fact, the Tuoba family had already secretly contacted the barbarians and wanted to rope them in. The Lion and Tiger Saints had always been hesitant. However, as Yiguchen's identity as Five Crown King was exposed, they also knew that they had formed a grudge with Yiguchen. Even if they stood on the Mu Lanyue's side, they would probably be targeted in the future. In that case, they might as well completely side with the Tuoba family and eliminate Yiguchen, Mu Lanyue, and the others together. With the betrayal of the Lion and Tiger Saints, the whole situation was completely hopeless for the Mu Lanyue's camp. Mu Lanfang and Mu Lanxuan were already dumbfounded. The 7-colored jade dragon ginseng is ours. The Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Shaotian, and the others directly rushed toward the seven-colored jade dragon ginseng. Although there were demonic apes blocking the way, these demonic apes only had physical bodies that had reached the hidden latch of life and death. They did not have a sea of consciousness, so they did not pose much of a threat to the Golden Sun Saint Sun and the others. Seeing this, Yi Guqin's aura burst out again. The Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, and Tang Snake, the 5 primogenitor spirits directly rushed out of Yi Guqin's body and appeared in the void. In an instant, a terrifying 5 elements power swept out in all directions. The saints and saintesses who wanted to get close to the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng were all sent flying. Not only that, but even the few demonized apes were forced to retreat from the shock. The 7-colored jade dragon ginseng was almost the only hope to save Su Jianshi. Yi Guqin had to get it even if he had to risk his life. The moment everyone was pushed back, Yi Guqin used wave-like subtle steps and flashed to the side of the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng. He grabbed it with one hand and put it into his bag. I finally got it. Yi Guqin breathed a sigh of relief. He hid his identity, entered the land of 5 elements, and thought of ways to sneak into the 5 elements temple and the door of the ancient gods. Wasn't it all for the sake of obtaining the sacred herb? Now that he finally got it, although Yi Guqin breathed a sigh of relief, he knew that things weren't as simple as they seemed. As expected, after he obtained the sacred herb, Tuoba Shang and the others all stared at him. On the other side, Mulanfang, Mulanxuan, and the others' eyes flickered with a dark light. This was because Yi Guqin had 2 sacred herbs on him, the reversal origin fruit and the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't have the strength to obtain 2 sacred herbs. In an instant, Yi Guqin became the target of public criticism and was in a dangerous situation. Chapter 575. It could be said that Yi Guqin was surrounded by enemies. His only allies, Mulangyue and the Dragon Lady, were also severely injured and could not even protect themselves. Shui Ruo was slightly weaker and could not help much for the time being. Only the Wooden Bell Spirit was left. Even if it wanted to, it could only block the attack of one saint. There were more than 10 people in Tuoba's camp, including experts like the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Shaotan, and Mo Yi. Mulanfang and the others in Mulan's camp would not take action. They even had other plans. In short, Yi Guqin was now in a very dangerous situation. However, before Tuoba Shang and the others could take action, the demonized apes roared and charged at Yi Guqin. After all, Yi Guqin had killed a demonized ape with his own hands. Now that he had taken 2 sacred herbs, he naturally became the demonized ape's target. The 3 demonized apes charged toward Yi Guqin with demonic chi billowing around their bodies. Yi Guqin was wearing the heavenly demon general armor and holding the blood hell sword. His strength had increased by several times. He activated the ancient god tactic again. Ancient light runes spread out from his body and a faintly discernible star appeared on his forehead. The moment Yi Guqin activated the ancient god body, vaguely, a weak ancient voice seemed to be heard in his sea of consciousness. My successor, return. This weak voice transmission caused Yi Guqin's eyes to shine with a strange light, but he didn't show it. What he needed to do now was to deal with the 3 demonized apes. After Yi Guqin transformed into the ancient god form, the 3 demonized apes seemed to have encountered their mortal enemies. They let out shrill cries as if they had encountered a mortal enemy. Boom, boom, boom. While Yi Guqin was surrounded by the 3 demonized apes, the other saints and saintesses did not take action. If they stepped forward now, they would undoubtedly be attacked by the demonized apes. At that time, they would help Yi Guqin share the pressure. Therefore, the eyes of Tuoba Shang and the others flickered as they went to fight for other opportunities. As for Yi Guqin, when the 3 demonized apes depleted his strength, Tuoba Shang and the others would naturally think of a way to deal with him. Seeing Yi Guqin being surrounded by the 3 demonized apes, the expressions of Wan Yinlan and the other elders turned somewhat grave. Yi Guqin's appearance had undoubtedly disrupted their plans. However, what Wan Yinlan needed was only a young king. If Yi Guqin could survive and defeat Tuoba Shang, then Wan Yanlan could pass the position of young lord to Yiguchen. Of course, they still didn't know that Yiguchen wasn't a barbarian. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so indifferent. In the Great Tomb, Yiguchen held the blood prison sword in his hand as sword chi surged. At the same time, the 5 primogenitor spirits suppressed the demonized apes. The bodies of these demonic apes were comparable to the hidden gates of life and death. With 3 of them attacking at the same time, only Tuoba Shang could hold on for a while. Even the Golden Sun Saint's son and the others would find it difficult to survive. However, Yiguchen was different. His ancient god power seemed to be able to restrain the demonized apes. In addition, he had the defense of the heavenly demon general armor, the attack of the blood prison sword, and the strength of the peak 9 changes of the divine soul. The current Yiguchen was much stronger than before. Boom! After another attack, Yiguchen's sword split a demonized ape in half. The 5 primogenitor spirits attacked the other 2 demonized apes at the same time. The dragon lady and the others weren't in a good situation. Shi, Mu Lanyue, Shui Ruo, and Mu Zhongling gathered together and were besieged by the Lion Tiger Saints and the Triple Crown Kings of the Tuoba family. As for Mu Lanyue and Mu Lanxuan, they had already shrunk to the side. They couldn't even protect themselves, let alone help Mu Lanyue and the others. In just a short while, Tuoba Shang, the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and the others had already snatched a few opportunities. At this time, Yiguchen had also killed the remaining 2 demonized apes. However, Yiguchen had also suffered some injuries. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. After all, their bodies were comparable to the hidden gates of life and death. Yiguchen couldn't kill them without suffering any injuries. 5 Crown King is just a title. As long as I kill you, I'll naturally inherit the title of 5 Crown King and even the title of Young King. Tuoba Shang stared at Yiguchen. Kill! There was no room for negotiation. The people of the Tuoba family rushed towards Yiguchen. As for the heavily injured Dragon Maiden and the others, they were stopped by the saints. It was impossible for them to save Yiguchen. Tuoba Shang didn't attack directly. Instead, he sneered as he watched Yiguchen being besieged. If Yiguchen couldn't even survive this round, then he wasn't qualified to be his opponent. You're courting death. Yiguchen was expressionless and cold. These 2 sacred herbs were items that he had to obtain. If anyone tried to stop him, he wouldn't show any mercy. Boom! The 5 primogenitor totems' power spread out and suppressed the attacks of the Golden Sun Saint and the others. Go, he's alone. He can't stop us. The White Lion Saint roared. His supreme totem, the Golden Eye White Lion, was summoned. The Black Tiger Saint also summoned his heavenly demonic tiger. When the 2 of them joined forces, the power of their attacks multiplied. The Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and the other Triple Crown Kings also attacked. Mu Lanyue's face turned pale at the sight of this. Outside the Tomb of the Gods and Demons, some of the barbarian tribe experts looked at this ridiculous scene with disdain. Even the Sky Barbarian Lord said coldly, "We barbarian tribe worship the brave. Since when did we use such a method? 5 Crown King is in trouble now." Some of the barbarian tribe experts shook their heads. Tuoba Outyan had a cold smile on his face. The Grand Elder of the Tuoba family was also sneering. It seemed that 5 Crown King was going to fall in the Tomb of the Gods and Demons before he could rise to power. Great Elder, that's 5 Crown King. How can he fall like this? The Grand Elder of the Mulan family said. It was not that he cared about Yiguchen's life, but if Yiguchen died, no one would be able to fight against Tuoba Shang. This is also a test for him. If 5 Crown King can really defeat everyone and even defeat Tuoba Shang, then it's not a bad idea to pass the position of young lord to him, Wan Yanlan said calmly. A great battle began in the Tomb of the Gods and Demons. Yiguchen alone blocked many of the barbarian tribe's saints and saintesses. Sky Lion Divine Fist, Tiger Roar Flash, Saint Sun Technique, Wind Ripping Hand. The Lion Tiger Saints, the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and many others all attacked at the same time. Come on, what's there to be afraid of? Yiguchen laughed heartily. He no longer hid anything. If he held back, he might really be in danger. As for the consequences of his identity being exposed, Yiguchen naturally had a plan. Hundred Flower Child was indeed a layer of protection, but Yiguchen had another layer of protection. Therefore, Yiguchen decided not to hide anything. Boom! A layer of blood-colored sword intent spread out from Yiguchen's body. The Azura Blood Sea was activated. Boom! Another type of sword intent rushed out, causing the surrounding void to tremble. An illusory primordial divine mountain appeared. The gravity sword domain was activated. God-slaying sword technique, Permitha. Yiguchen's true chi and totem power were activated. 2 illusory sword Dao domains were activated. The 5 primogenitor totems roared in the sky. At this moment, the Sword Sect and 5 Crown King had completely merged. The power of the 2 systems had merged into one. The Sword Dao domain swept out in all directions. The primogenitor totems suppressed heaven and earth. In an instant, everyone's expression changed inside and outside the tomb of the gods and demons. An indescribable look of astonishment appeared on everyone's faces. Chapter 576. When Yiguchen revealed his identity as 5 Crown King, everyone inside and outside the tomb of the gods and devils was shocked, but they were still able to accept it. After all, no matter what, Dugubai was still a barbarian. Perhaps he had obtained the inheritance of 5 Crown King by chance. But now, when Yiguchen revealed his genuine chi and sword principle cultivation, everyone's eyes popped out. A look of disbelief appeared on their faces. How could they not see that the sword move was not a barbarian's move at all? Moreover, Yiguchen did not even hide his genuine chi. Therefore, his identity was exposed almost immediately. This sword intent. Yiguchen from the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. Even Tuoba Shang could not hide the shock on his face. Even with his calm and cold personality, he had such an expression. One could see how shocked he was. Yiguchen's name as Swordmaster was also known in the barbarian tribe. His Shura sword intent was the most well-known. Therefore, when Yiguchen released the Shura sword intent, the saints and saintesses immediately realized that the true identity of 5 Crown King was a Swordmaster. Shock, dumbfounded disbelief. The Gold Sun Saint, Feng Shan, the Lion Tiger Saints, and the others were all stunned. They felt that it was extremely absurd. Rumble. As their moves collided, Yiguchen used the power of the 2 sword doctrine domains, the power of the 5-colored totem, and the god-slaying sword technique to block the moves of the Golden Sun Saint Sun and the others. Of course, Yiguchen also retreated a dozen steps and groaned in his chest. No matter how strong his cultivation was now, he had not reached the life and death threshold. It was still difficult for him to block the attacks of so many people by himself. However, if it were anyone else, they would have died under such a joint attack. They would not have been able to withstand it. After the clash of moves, the entire great tomb fell into a strange silence. Mu Lanyue also stared at Yiguchen in disbelief. When Yiguchen revealed his identity as 5 Crown King, she was shocked, but she was even more delighted. But now, her joy had turned into heaviness. The identity of 5 Crown King would not matter to anyone as long as they were a berserker. They would still be acknowledged by 5 Element Temple. However, if it fell into the hands of an outsider, the nature of the situation would be different. The 5 Elements Temple would not appreciate or nurture Yiguchen. They would only feel anger, humiliation, and the determination to destroy Yiguchen. How is this possible? Why? Mu Lanyue laughed bitterly. It was obvious that once Yiguchen's true identity was exposed, it would mean that their Mulan clan would be completely defeated. Even if Yiguchen defeated Tuoba Shang, the 5-element Divine Temple would not acknowledge Yiguchen's identity. Instead, they would kill Yiguchen and even implicate the Mulan clan. Because it was Mu Lanyue who brought Yiguchen into the door of the ancient god. And the door of the ancient god was the Berserker clan's holy land. No outsider had ever stepped into it. As for Hundred Flower Child, she hid very well, so she had never been discovered. Mu Lanyue's face was as pale as paper. She turned to the indifferent dragoness and asked, You already knew? Dragoness was silent for a moment. She did not hide anything and nodded. Do you know that my Mulan clan might fall into the abyss because of your deceit? Mu Lanyue gritted her teeth. Although she hated Dragoness, it was too late now. I'm sorry, Yiguchen is my savior and has helped me a lot. I can't not help him. Dragoness's tone was apologetic. Dragoness knew that now that Yiguchen's identity was exposed, she would not be able to escape the blame. Once she left the door of the ancient god, she would probably be punished by the five-element temple. Shui Ruo was also stunned. Yiguchen's identity changed one after another, making her unable to regain her senses. But the little girl's expression was firm. No matter what, it was Big Brother Dugu who took care of Shui Ruo. That's why Shui Ruo is here today. Even if Big Brother Dugu isn't from the Berserker clan, Shui Ruo will not go against him. Compared to Dragoness and the others, Mulan Fong, Mulan Xuan, and the others were overjoyed. Previously, they were worried that Yiguchen would really become the young king and take revenge on them. But now, the one whose life was in danger was Yiguchen. In short, when Yiguchen's identity was exposed, his situation was equivalent to going from heaven to hell. A mere outsider actually obtained the inheritance of the five-crown king. This is a taboo of the Berserker clan. Mu Lanyue, do you still want to stand on the same side as Yiguchen? Tuoba Shang questioned. Mu Lanyue's expression changed as she clenched her jade-like hands. Mu Lanfang and Mu Lanxuan hurriedly said, "Of course not. I feel that our two clans should temporarily stop fighting and deal with Yiguchen together. He stole our Berserker clan's inheritance. This is unforgivable." Mu Lanfang's clamor was the most intense. She couldn't wait to kill Yiguchen. Yiguchen's gaze was incomparably cold as he stared at Mu Lanfang. He had let Mu Lanfang off many times for the sake of Mu Lanyue and Mu Lanbua. It seemed that he had indeed made a mistake. Some people should be killed. There was no need to leave any leeway. All right, let's temporarily put aside our grudges and deal with Yiguchen together. Tuoba Shang nodded slightly. Now that Yiguchen was the sword master and the five-crown king, he had two identities and two cultivation powers. Tuoba Shang knew that even after his transformation, it wouldn't be easy for him to defeat Yiguchen. Since that was the case, he might as well let the others exhaust him first. If Yiguchen could survive, then he would be qualified to fight with him. Let's go! Mu Lanfang, Mu Lanxuan, and the others also joined in the encirclement. Mu Lanyue's expression was conflicted, but she didn't make a move. The dragoness was heavily injured. She gritted her teeth and wanted to help Yiguchen, but she was powerless. The wooden bell spirit was hesitant. Yiguchen was only the five-crown king, so she naturally had to be on good terms with him. But now Yiguchen was still the sword master. This caused the wooden bell spirit to be conflicted. She originally wanted to help Yiguchen, but now she could only not make a move against him. Seeing so many people surround him again, Yiguchen's eyes didn't have the slightest bit of fear. There was only endless battle intent. Come all of you come. Today, I, Yiguchen, will open the path with blood and kill with my sword. Whoever stands in my way will die. Yiguchen raised his head and roared. The five primogenitor spirits roared endlessly. Two illusory sword domains covered the area. Yiguchen took one domain each. It was as if he had been possessed. He had the majestic aura of one man holding the pass against 10,000. There was no hesitation, no superfluous words. Only by killing to the point of terror could one make others fearful. Just as the bloody battle began inside the great tomb, the atmosphere outside the tomb of the fiend gods was so heavy that it was suffocating. Chapter 577. First Elder Wanyanlan's face was frozen like an ice abyss. His withered hand that held the walking stick trembled slightly. Humiliation. Extreme humiliation. The most respected inheritance of the barbarian race, five-crown king, had fallen into the hands of an outsider. How could Wanyanlan not be angry and humiliated? Moreover, Wanyanlan had once followed the legendary five-crown king. He had great respect for five-crown king and worshipped him as if he was a god. Therefore, Wan Yanlan had already decided that if 5 Crown King's successor could withstand the pressure and defeat Tuoba Shang, he would support 5 Crown King and become the barbarian race's young king. As for the 5 Elements Temple, it would be quintuple Crown King's strongest backing. However, now that Yi Guchen's identity as an outsider had been exposed, all of these possibilities were gone. This was because the 5 Elements Temple would never allow an outsider to obtain 5 Crown King's inheritance and become the barbarian race's young king. Humiliation. Wan Yanlan's body trembled. A powerful aura swept out and changed the color of the sky and earth outside the tomb of the gods and devils. Sand and stones flew and the earth shook. As the first elder of the 5 Elements Temple, Wan Yanlan was extremely powerful. Even the Heaven Barbarian King was no match for Wan Yanlan. If Wan Yanlan wasn't at the end of his life and couldn't use his full strength, he alone would be equivalent to 4 or 5 divine dwelling experts. It was because of this strength that Wan Yanlan could become the pillar of the barbarian race in the 5 Elements Temple. Everyone present fell silent. They knew that the first elder was truly enraged. On the Tuoba family side, although Tuoba Outyan and the others looked solemn, their eyes were filled with smiles. Originally, they thought that 5 Crown King's appearance would threaten Tuoba Shang's position. However, it seemed that they didn't need to worry about this at all. The Grand Elder of the Tuoba family was also overjoyed. On the other hand, the Grand Elder of the Mulan family and Mulan Bo's faces were ugly. The Mulan family can't escape the blame for the outsider entering the door of the ancient god. When the door of the ancient god ends, the Mulan family will be judged. Wan Yanlan said expressionlessly. Muranbo's body trembled as he nodded heavily. And this brat, I heard that he's Yi Guchen from the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest, right? When he comes out from the gate of the ancient gods, tie him to the sacrificial pillar in my 5 Elements divine temple and strip him of his primogeniture totem. After that, he will die from the pain of being burned by the raging flames. Wan Yanlan's voice was cold. Some of the barbarian tribe members trembled slightly when they heard this. The pain of having one's totem stripped away was comparable to having one's heart and lungs dug out. Not to mention that one had to be burned to death. That was simply miserable to the extreme. In the water tribe, Emo Tao was grinning from ear to ear. From the previous despair and unwillingness to accept this, he was now beaming with joy. What a twist in life. Dugubai, no Yi Guchen, so what if you're powerful? You're still going to die in the end. With the great elder's decision, do you think you can escape? Emo Tao laughed happily. Even further away, 100 Flowers' child, who was hiding in the dark, had a dark expression on her face. Alas, we've been exposed. It's difficult to take this boy out. 100 Flowers' child sighed. It was extremely difficult to take Yi Guchen away under the noses of Wan Yanlan, Heaven Barbarian King, and other experts from the 5 Elements Temple, as well as many barbarian tribe chiefs. 100 Flowers' child would probably have to risk her life to have a chance of winning. However, in order to reverse the origin fruit, 100 Flowers' child was still willing to take the risk. Compared to death, 100 Flowers' child was more afraid of being trapped in this young body for the rest of her life. That would be a fate worse than death. Outside the tomb of the gods and devils, at the same time that Wan Yanlan was passing the judgment on Yi Guchen. Inside the tomb, strong waves of energy swept out in all directions. Totem power and genuine chi burst out with a loud bang. Fortunately, Yi Guchen had the 5 primogenitor totems, which could restrain the barbarian tribe. When the 5 primogenitor totems released their primogenitor totems, the holy sons and holy daughters besieging him were weakened by at least 30 to 40% of their totem power. In addition to the burden imposed by the Gravity Sword realm, their strength was reduced by at least half, or even 60 to 70%. Only in this way could Yi Guchen compete with the barbarian tribe experts. Great Void Sword Wave. Yi Guchen held the Blood Hell Sword in his hand, and the blade resonated with the void. Waves of transparent sword waves spread out in all directions. Some of the weaker barbarian tribe holy sons were directly forced back and spat out blood. However, Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and the Lion and Tiger Saints withstood the pressure of the sword wave and attacked Yi Guchen again. Boom! Boom! Boom. The continuous collisions caused ripples to burst out. Golden Sun Saint and the others all besieged Yiguchen. Yiguchen gradually spat out blood from the corner of his mouth, and he groaned in pain. Of course, some of the weaker barbarian tribe Holy Sons were directly penetrated by Yiguchen's sword and killed. Ancient God's Tactics. Yiguchen activated the Ancient God's Tactics again. His body grew taller, and the divine power in his body surged. He stabbed out with his sword, which seemed to contain the power of the ancient god, and caused the void to emit a shrill sound. Pucci! The sword directly penetrated the skull of a barbarian tribe Holy Sun, and red and white matter splattered. Yiguchen, you can't escape today. Wind Dragon Technique. Feng Xiaotian activated his wind elemental totem, and a majestic wind elemental totem power turned into a wind dragon, which attacked Yiguchen. The Lion and Tiger Saints saw this and joined forces to attack. Lion and Tiger Demon Fist. The two punched out at the same time, and their moves seemed to resonate. Two light lions and black tigers, formed completely by totem power, rushed toward Yiguchen. Holy Light Illumination. Golden Sun Saint also prepared to use his move. However, at this moment, there was a Pucci. A pitch-black sword pierced through Golden Sun Saint's chest, stained with blood. Golden Sun Saint's face froze. He turned his head in disbelief and saw the silent barbarian youth looking at him coldly. Emoji. Golden Sun Saint spat out blood as he stared at the person in front of him. It was the wandering barbarian who had been recruited by the Tuoba family. This scene was out of everyone's expectations. Tuoba Shang was also shocked. Only Yiguchen looked at Mo Yi with a faint smile, as if he was not surprised. Mo Ye's body shook, and all his disguises were removed. The person who appeared in front of everyone was a black-clothed young man with cold facial features. It was Su Moyan. It's you. Golden Sun Saint's eyes froze. In the forbidden zone of the ancient baron, Su Moyan had helped in the valley and saved the people of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. Therefore, Feng Shan, Golden Sun Saint, and the others all knew Su Moyan. They did not expect that other than Yiguchen, there would be an outsider who sneaked into the door of the ancient god. This was simply out of everyone's expectations. Su Moyan's expression was cold. His majestic genuine qi gushed out of his body and poured into Mo Kuang. Then, the sword vibrated, and Golden Sun Saint's entire body exploded into blood. A heavyweight Triple Crown champion had fallen just like that. Some of the saints and saintesses present were terrified. Chapter 578. Yiguchen alone was powerful enough to suppress them all. Even if they joined forces, it would still be difficult to suppress him. Now, Su Moyan had appeared and killed the Golden Sun Saint's son with a sneak attack. The Golden Sun Saint's son died with grievance. Originally, with his strength, even if he faced Su Moyan, he would not die in one move. But Su Moyan hid his strength very well. Even when Yiguchen was besieged, he did not make a move. Now, with a thunderous attack, it was impossible to guard against, so he successfully killed one of them. Su Moyan moved and directly rushed to Yiguchen's side. In fact, he had been hiding under the identity of Mo Yi. He originally wanted to obtain the sacred elixir by himself. Who would have thought that he would meet Yiguchen? However, Mo Yi did not approach Yiguchen immediately. If he had approached Yiguchen from the beginning, he would have attracted the suspicion of Tuoba Shang and the others. Later, after entering the tomb of the divines and demons and Yiguchen forcefully seized the sacred elixir, Mo Yi revealed his identity. Su Moyan did not reveal his identity immediately because he knew that Yiguchen would definitely be attacked. So, he had been hiding until he found a good opportunity to kill a heavyweight. Then he directly attacked and killed the Golden Sun Saint's son. The death of a powerful Triple Crown king would naturally reduce the pressure on Yiguchen. Mo Yi, how hateful! The eyes of Tuoba Shang, Feng Xiaotian, and the others turned red. They had never imagined that they would be fooled by Su Moyan all this time. Even the Golden Sun Saint's son had died because of this. It was a great loss. Although Tuoba Shang's side still had the upper hand in the current situation, after losing the Golden Sun Saint's son, their strength had weakened a lot. Outside the tomb of the divines and demons, Wanyan Lan and the other 5 elements temple experts' faces were gloomy. Yi Guchen alone had already infuriated them, and now Su Moyan had appeared as well. Can anyone enter the door of the ancient god, the sacred land of the barbarian tribe? Wanyan Lan's face was cold, and his tone was cold. Everyone in the surroundings kept silent for fear of provoking Wanyan Lan. Elder Wanyan Lan, don't worry. After the door of the ancient god ends, neither of them will be able to escape. The Toba family's grand elder said hurriedly. Inside the great tomb, Su Moyan and Yi Guchen stood side by side. Can, Su Moyan said after a moment of silence. Yi Guchen glanced at Su Moyan in surprise. One should know that Su Moyan had always been prejudiced against Yi Guchen. Even though Yi Guchen was already a sword master in the Saint Origin dynasty and was known as a top heaven's pride, Su Moyan had always doubted him. Yi Guchen was surprised to hear such words coming from Su Moyan's mouth. But what he didn't know was that the reason he had gained Su Moyan's approval was because of his performance. For the sake of seizing the sacred medicine, he single-handedly blocked the pass and swept through all 4 directions. This proved that Yi Guchen truly cared about Su Jianshi. How could Su Moyan not see it? This is what I should do. Yi Guchen didn't feel that he had sacrificed much, because Su Jianshi had sacrificed much more. No matter what, you still worked hard to obtain the sacred medicine for my sister. I'm sorry for doubting you before. Su Moyan's expression was still cold, like an iceberg that hadn't changed in 10,000 years, but his tone was much warmer. You're saying this? Yi Guchen frowned slightly. Su Moyan said indifferently, although I've obtained the sacred medicine, I must bring it back to my sister. So, I'll leave it to you. Su Moyan meant that he would block everything for Yi Guchen. It's impossible to keep you here. Yi Guchen frowned. If he really let Su Moyan stay behind to bring out the sacred medicine, how would Su Jianshi accept the cruel reality when she woke up and found her brother dead? My death isn't important. What's important is that my sister wakes up. Su Moyan didn't seem to care about his own life. That's also impossible. There must be a way for us to leave safely. Yi Guchen pondered. At this moment, the ancient voice seemed to ring out in his mind once again. My bloodline has returned from the underground. The monster is about to be unsealed. Yi Guchen looked around. Suddenly, he saw a circular depression in the center of the ground where countless totem patterns gathered. Could that be? Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as he rushed to the center of the great tomb. He took out the 5 divine beast jade and pressed it against the depression. In an instant, the entire great tomb shook as if the heavens and earth were falling apart. What's going on? What's going on? Everyone was puzzled. Only Tuoba Shang stared at Yi Guchen with a stern expression. He saw the 5 divine beasts jade in Yi Guchen's hand. He understood that the door to the tomb of the gods and demons wasn't open because of his bloodline, but because Yi Guchen had secretly used the ancient jade. Damn it! Tuoba Shang's expression was extremely ugly. It was as if someone had slapped him hard in the face. The moment Yi Guchen pressed the 5 divine beasts jade into the depression, the ground around him suddenly distorted like a whirlpool. It pulled Yi Guchen into it as if he had fallen into quicksand. Tuoba Shang's footsteps flashed as he tried to escape. Don't even think about it. Su Moyan's eyes sharpened. Although he didn't know what method Yi Guchen had used, at least there was an exit. Su Moyan decided to stay behind and guard the entrance to the whirlpool. Just as Su Moyan was about to stop them, the lion and tiger saints, Feng Xiaotian, and all the saints and saintesses, even Mu Lanyue, were about to enter the whirlpool. They all guessed that the greatest opportunity and inheritance in the tomb of the gods and demons, the ancestral bloodline, was inside the whirlpool. Su Moyan was delayed by Feng Xiaotian and the others and couldn't stop Tuoba Shang from entering. However, the others weren't as observant as Tuoba Shang and didn't rush out immediately. Sigh. Su Moyan sighed softly in his heart. However, Tuoba Shang alone shouldn't be a threat to Yi Guchen. However, Su Moyan wouldn't let the others enter. Su Moyan wielded his long sword, Mo Kuang, and swept his sword across the ground, creating a crack that was at least 9 feet deep. Anyone who crosses this line will die. Su Moyan's tone was extremely cold as his cold gaze swept across the scene. Do you think you can stop all of us by yourself? Even Yi Guchen can't do it. Feng Xiaotian's expression was stern. The whirlpool entrance might be related to the ancestral bloodline and the only chance to become a young king. These barbarian saints and saintesses would do their best to enter, even if it meant risking their lives. No matter how strong a tiger was, how could it defeat a pack of wolves? Su Moyan's face was as cold as an ancient iceberg. He formed a seal with his hands and shouted coldly, "Infinite heaven and earth, blood spirit borrowing power, life-devouring secret technique, activate." With a loud explosion, Su Moyan's blood burned, and an incomparably vigorous genuine qi burst out like a torrent. His aura skyrocketed from the peak of the 9 changes of divine soul to the hidden gate of life and death. Even Yi Guchen's soul-devouring secret technique couldn't break through the shackles of the realm and raise Yi Guchen's cultivation to the hidden gate of life and death. However, Su Moyan's life-devouring secret technique could. Because the life-devouring secret technique was based on Su Moyan's vitality. Su Moyan was burning his own life force in order to borrow this kind of power. The hidden gate of life and death. Feng Xiaotian and the others all looked wary. The strength of the hidden gate of life and death was not on the same level as the peak of the 9 changes of divine soul. However, they had many people on their side, while Su Moyan was alone. Before Su Moyan made a move, he spat out a mouthful of black blood. His face became extremely pale, but it also became colder. "Yi Guchen, I'll burn my vitality to guard this boundary for you. I hope you can bring the sacred medicine out and save my sister. Sister, I may not be able to see you wake up, but as long as you're alive, I'll still smile in the underworld." Su Moyan's cold face suddenly revealed a faint smile. This kind of sibling love was a love that could disregard life and death. The bloodline inheritance of our ancestors is right in front of us. Let's kill him together. He reached the hidden gate of life and death with a secret technique. He won't last long. Feng Xiaotian, Tuoba Lai, White Lion Saint's son, Black Tiger Saint's son, Mulan Fang, Mulan Xuan, and more than 20 saint sons and saintesses of the barbarian race rushed towards Su Moyan. The weakest among them was a double crown champion. On one side were more than 20 saint sons and saintesses, whose eyes were bloodshot. They wanted to obtain the inheritance of their ancestors even at the cost of their lives. On the other side was Su Moyan, who burned his vitality to reach the hidden gate of life and death. This battle was destined to be tragic. Chapter 579. Just as Su Moyan was burning his life force to block the barbarian race holy sons and holy daughters for Yi Guchen, who was pulled into the vortex, suddenly found himself in another strange space. Yi Guchen looked around. This was an extremely ancient land. The ground was dark red, as if it was soaked in countless amounts of blood. There were also many huge white skeletons lying on the ground, as tall as mountains. I didn't expect there to be such a strange space in the tomb of the gods and demons, Yi Guchen said to himself as he put away the 5 divine beasts jade. There was a space inside the door of the ancient gods, but there was another hidden space in the tomb of the gods and demons. Yi Guchen finally understood why no one had been able to obtain the so-called ancestral bloodline or even enter the tomb of the gods and demons. It was because they didn't even have the 5 divine beasts jade. Su Moyan didn't follow me. Yi Guchen frowned. However, he didn't know how to leave this space because there was no exit. The entrance to the vortex was already nowhere to be found. Without waiting for Su Moyan, Yi Guchen thought for a moment, then flashed forward. If his guess was right, he might be able to resolve the current crisis if he could obtain the ancient god's inheritance. Not long after Yi Guchen left, a distorted vortex appeared in the void again. Tuoba Shang's figure fell from it. He was also confused for a moment, then his expression suddenly revealed extreme joy. This is the real opportunity in the tomb of the gods and demons. The ancestral bloodline is inside. If I obtain it, I can directly become a young king. A pitch-black light suddenly flashed into Oba Shang's eyes. A faint pitch-black demonic aura was faintly spreading out from his body. The demon chi was the same as the demon chi of the demonized ape. However, what was surprising was that Tuoba Shang didn't seem to be affected by the demon chi at all and didn't transform into the so-called demonized ape. On the other side, Yiguchen walked on the ancient land. He discovered that the natural elements in this space seemed to be denser than in the outside world. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, and the other natural elements were extremely concentrated here. They were at least 10 times more concentrated than the 5 elements in the outside world. It could be said that this was a heaven for the barbarians to cultivate their totems. If the 5 elements berserkers had obtained this treasured land, then many powerful berserkers would have appeared a long time ago, and even the 7 great forces of power might not be able to suppress them. Where is the ancient god clan's land of inheritance? Yiguchen was searching. The so-called inheritance of the barbarian tribe's ancestors was the inheritance of the ancient god clan. At this time, Yiguchen suddenly saw a thick black demonic chi in the distance. It seemed to form a black pillar that pierced through the heavens and earth. Yiguchen's eyes flashed as he approached swiftly. To his surprise, he noticed that it was an enormous pitch-black hole that was almost 3 kilometers wide. Endless demonic chi surged out of the hole. To a certain extent, it was similar to the bottomless demon abyss. Anyone who came into contact with this dense demonic chi would turn into a demonic ape. Yiguchen frowned slightly and activated the ancient god skill. His body grew taller, and ancient light runes spread out from his body. A faint star mark appeared between his eyebrows. The moment Yiguchen transformed into his ancient god form, the ancient voice sounded again. "The inheritor of my clan, return." The source of the sound was inside the cave. Enter. Yiguchen had no other choice. He could only take the risk and become the true inheritor of the ancient god clan. Only then would he be able to resolve the crisis. Not long after Yiguchen entered the hole, Tuoba Shang also arrived. "It's here. The voice told me that it's here." Tuoba Shang's eyes were pitch black, as if they were filled with thick demonic chi. He did not use any protection, nor did he use any totem power. He jumped into the hole directly. Strangely, the thick demonic chi did not affect Tuoba Shang at all. Instead, it made Tuoba Shang feel like a fish in water. His aura rose again. Yiguchen entered the depths of the hole. Totem power surged around his body, mixed with the power of the ancient god skill. The ancient god skill was the best at restraining demonic chi. Hence, the thick demonic chi did not affect him much. After a full quarter of an hour, Yiguchen finally reached the bottom of the cave. The bottom of the hole was beyond Yiguchen's expectations. That was because the entire underground space was as vast as the sky. If one were to shout, one would even hear a loud echo. This was no longer a cave. It was more like an underground world. Yiguchen continued to walk forward. At that moment, a few figures flashed through the dark demonic chi and charged toward Yiguchen. It was a group of demon apes. Pumph! Yiguchen snorted. He unleashed all his power. It was easy to deal with the demon apes. He waved the blood hell sword and shattered the demon apes. But what followed was even more demonic apes. These demon apes can't be killed. Let's go straight to the deepest part. Yiguchen made up his mind. He did not want to be entangled with the demon apes. He used wave-like subtle steps and shuttled through the demon apes like a phantom. In the end, Yiguchen shook off the demon apes and reached the deepest part of the underground world. However, the scene in front of him shocked him. An incomparably huge pitch-black demonic ape existed within it. The demon ape was hundreds of feet tall. It was like a black primordial demon mountain. It was like a demon ape that had been magnified countless times. However, unlike the demonized ape, this black devil ape had 3 heads and 6 arms. Its entire body was branded with all sorts of ancient, pitch-black devil runes. At this moment, the 3 heads of the demonic ape had dark shackles around their necks. Its 6 thick ape arms were also covered in sealing chains. At the same time, there was an extremely mysterious and ancient formation on the ground where the demon ape was standing. It slowly rotated. Every time it rotated, a portion of the demon ape's flesh and blood essence would be refined. It was obvious that the demon ape was imprisoned here and refined for eternity. In the end, it would turn into nothingness. However, Yiguchen saw that the light and runes on the ancient formation had already dimmed and become blurry. It was obvious that it was starting to find it difficult to suppress the demon ape. At the same time, Yiguchen's gaze froze. Behind the demon ape, there was an extremely tall figure that was not any weaker than the demon ape. Behind the demon ape, it seemed to be suppressing the demon ape. The figure was like a golden statue. It was no different from a human, except that it had been magnified countless times. Its entire body was branded with ancient light runes. On its forehead, there were 4 shining stars. A 4-star ancient god. Yiguchen was astonished. He was at most a half-star ancient god. However, the ancient god in the golden statue was a 4-star ancient god. The gap between them was extremely large. However, the most important thing was that Yiguchen could sense a weak life force from the golden ancient god statue. Could it be a living ancient god and not a statue? Yiguchen could not help but wonder. At that moment, the ancient voice sounded in Yiguchen's mind again. My successor put the ancient god's jade archive into my heart. The ancient god's jade archive, could it be the 5 mythical beasts' ancient jade? Yiguchen suddenly understood. Just as Yiguchen was about to place the 5 mythical beasts' ancient jade, which was the ancient god's jade archive, in the heart of the golden ancient god statue, a cold voice abruptly sounded. Yiguchen, are you still dreaming of inheriting the barbarian tribe's ancestors' legacy? Yiguchen stopped and turned to look at the person who had come. You actually managed to find your way here. Yiguchen frowned slightly. Although this mysterious land was not particularly big, it was vast and boundless. He was able to come here because of the ancient voice in his mind. How did Tuoba Shang come here? Tuoba Shang sneered and said, Maybe I am the one chosen by heaven. I am destined to inherit the barbarian tribe's ancestors' legacy, and the title of young master is also destined to fall into my hands. In fact, what he did not say was that there was also an ancient voice in his mind that allowed him to find his way here. There is no point in saying more. You are just a loser. If I can defeat you once, I can defeat you again. Yiguchen was wearing the Sky Demon General armor and holding the Blood Hell Sword in his hand while maintaining his ancient god form. I have come out of the life and death cave and I am much stronger than before. Now that there are only the 2 of us, I, Tuoba Shang, will take back all the humiliation you have given me. As soon as Tuoba Shang finished speaking, a violent and terrifying aura rose from Tuoba Shang's body. His strength had reached the life and death hidden realm. Chapter 580. The enmity between Tuoba Shang and Yiguchen started in the ancient desolate forbidden zone, and it would not end until one of them was dead. Both of them wanted to obtain the inheritance of the ancient god tribe. This kind of conflict was unavoidable. It could only end with the fall of one of them. Tuoba Shang, let's end this between us today. Yiguchen said calmly. Although Tuoba Shang had revealed his strength at the life and death chamber, his expression did not change. Are you pretending to be calm? Tuoba Shang smiled coldly. He did not believe that Yiguchen was not surprised that he had entered the life and death chamber. One should know that the difference between the life and death chamber and the peak of the 9 transformations divine soul was not small. Boom. Yiguchen didn't want to say anything more. He stomped his feet on the ground and a terrifying rebounding force erupted. Yiguchen's body flew towards Tuoba Shang like a cannonball due to the rebounding force. God-slaying sword art, yellow spring. A sword flashed across the sky. The blood-red sword radiance was as bright as blood. As Yiguchen's strength and cultivation improved, his various swordsmanship became more powerful. Even a casual strike of his sword had the terrifying power to split the air. Totem power surged into Tuoba Shang's body. With a loud boom, his 4 supreme totem spirits rushed out from his body. Golden Saint Elephant, Undying Green Python, Flaming Demon Lizard, and Earth Dragon Beast. The moment the 4 supreme totems appeared, the pressure was terrifying. The vigorous totem power directly destroyed the blood-red sword light. Yi Guchen's expression did not change as he summoned the 5 ancestral totems in his body. Green dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise and Tang snake. As soon as the 5 primogenitor totems appeared, the entire space seemed to vibrate. An unparalleled sense of oppression attacked Tuo Bashang. His 4 supreme totems were suppressed once again. However, Tuo Bashang's expression did not change much. Yi Guchen, I've told you before that I'm different from before. Because I'm also 5 Crown King. Tuo Bashang revealed a cold smile. Soon after, he formed a seal with his hands once again. A wave of water attribute totem power spread out with a loud bang. Following a roar, a powerful exotic beast spirit covered in aqua-blue scales suddenly leapt out of Tuo Bashang's body. The supreme water-type totem, the water unicorn beast. Boom! On Tuo Bashang's side, with the addition of the water unicorn beast, his 5 supreme totems formed a 5 elements rotation. A strong 5 elements totem power spread out. The pressure of Yi Guchen's ancestral totem was instantly reduced by half. This was because Yi Guchen's totem pressure was divided into 2 parts. One was the suppression of the progenitor totem, and the other was the suppression of the 5 elements totem. However, now that the water unicorn beast had appeared, and Tuo Bashang had become the 5 crown king with the 5 elements totem, the 5 elements totem had disappeared. Only the suppression of the progenitor totem was left. Yi Guchen, you have no idea what kind of opportunity one obtained in the life and death cave. This water unicorn beast is a water-type totem spiritual seal that I obtained in the life and death cave. Tuo Bashang activated the power of the 5 elements totem and clashed with Yi Guchen. Although there was still the suppression of the progenitor totem, Tuo Bashang had already become a life and death hidden latch. In terms of cultivation realm, he was already able to suppress Yi Guchen. Therefore, it was Yi Guchen who was being suppressed by Tuo Bashang. Yi Guchen, I'll let you have a taste of being crushed to the ground. Tuo Bashang made a move. Golden light gathered and the Saint Elephant Heaven Suppression Seal appeared in mid-air, pressing down on Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's eyes sharpened. Although Tuo Bashang was different from before, Yi Guchen had not remained stagnant. Purple void mysterious thunder. Yi Guchen raised one hand and a terrifying silver-purple thunder burst out, bombarding the Saint Elephant Heaven Suppression Seal. Flame Demon Tyrant Fist. Tuo Bashang threw a punch at Yi Guchen. His fiery totem power gushed out like an erupting volcano, aiming directly at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen brandished his blood prison sword to block the attack. A terrifying force was transmitted from the sword. However, Yi Guchen, who had entered the ancient god form, had terrifying physical strength. He shook his sword and deflected Tuo Bashang's punch. Tuo Bashang threw another punch, accompanied by the shadow of a green python. It was as if it was going to bite Yi Guchen. It was the sky-devouring green python. Great Void Sword Wave. Yi Guchen shook his sword again, resonating with the void. A terrifying sword wave spread out, shattering the green python shadow. Tuo Bashang's expression changed slightly. He was proficient in the use of various totem powers. However, Yi Guchen was using a genuine energy-unique skill. Even Tuo Bashang had to be careful when dealing with it. In an instant, the sword wave swept across Tuo Bashang's body. He felt as if his internal organs were resonating and trembling. He felt as if they were about to shatter. 5 elements overlord body. Tuo Bashang roared furiously as rich 5 elements power gushed out from within his body. Then, numerous 5-colored runes spread out from the surface of his body, seemingly covering his entire body. As the 5-colored runes spread, the power of the sword ripple was completely neutralized. Tuo Bashang grew taller. His aura and physical strength became even stronger. He was like an awakened beast. Yi Guchen, I will tear you to pieces. Tuo Bashang's muscles bulged. Every move he made cracked the ground. The 5-colored divine light was like a blade cutting through the void. This showed how powerful the 5 elements overlord body was. Yi Guchen stepped forward again. He swung his blood-prison sword and fought with Tuoba Shang. Boom, boom, boom. Continuous sounds of explosions and collisions shook the void as cracks spread out. This extremely violent aura seemed to have attracted the three-headed six-armed demon ape and the golden ancient god statue. Devil chi and golden light seemed to spread from their bodies as well. Boom. After another collision, Yiguchen's sword hit Tuoba Shang's shoulder. However, Tuoba Shang, who had entered the hidden latch of life and death, had activated the five elements overlord body. His physical body was comparable to metal. Although the blood prison sword had cut into Tuoba Shang's skin, it did not cut off his entire arm. At the same time, Tuoba Shang threw out a punch. Five-wheel Vajra fist. An intense five-colored divine radiance gathered on the tip of Tuoba Shang's fist. Then, it landed heavily on Yiguchen's chest. Even with the protection of the heavenly demon general armor, Yiguchen felt a terrifying force bursting out from his chest. His body was also sent flying and smashed into a wall. If it had been an ordinary person, even Feng Xiaotian or the Golden Sun Saint Sun, who were Triple Crown Kings, they would have been killed by Tuoba Shang's punch. However, Yiguchen's heavenly demon general armor, coupled with his ancient god form, had only injured him. It was not fatal. The sound of panting echoed in the air. Yiguchen escaped from the crack in the wall. He felt his blood boiling in his chest. As for Tuoba Shang's shoulder, it was also bleeding. This is the power of the hidden latch of life and death? Yiguchen sneered. Tuoba Shang's face changed immediately. Yiguchen's words were harsh to his ears. Then I will let you know what the hidden latch of life and death is. Tuoba Shang said coldly. At this moment, his totem power and soul power completely exploded. Chapter 581. The difference between life and death realm and divine soul realm was that besides the ability to form wings of true chi, one could also open the Dantian and Sea of Consciousness. The power in the Dantian and the soul power in the Sea of Consciousness could merge and produce greater power. As for the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth, it was an illusory bridge of spiritual chi in the Dantian and Sea of Consciousness. It allowed one to communicate with the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, thus giving one the ability to step on the void. But no matter what, life and death realm and spiritual bridge of heaven and earth were far beyond the divine soul realm. Even if Yiguchen was strong enough to fight against life and death realm experts, his true chi was still not enough. But his true chi could not merge with soul power and could only be used separately. Soul power had its own means of attack. And true chi had its own means of attack. But at this moment, Tuoba Shang's totem power was communicating with his soul power, causing his aura to soar. The totem power also had a spiritual nature and was very flexible. Oh, only the minor threshold? Yiguchen sneered. He could also feel that Tuoba Shang's breakthrough in life and death realm was not complete. So what? I'll kill you and take the ancestors' inheritance. It will cleanse my body, open my Dantian and Sea of Consciousness, and become a great threshold expert. Tuoba Shang did not care at all. Minor threshold and great threshold. The difference of one word was like heaven and earth. Originally, such a realm could not be changed once it was broken through. But the ancient god clan's opportunities were miraculous. If he could cleanse his body with the ancient god bloodline, Tuoba Shang was confident that it would be possible for him to reach the great threshold. But before that, I'll take care of you first. Tuoba Shang took a step forward. Almost instantly, his figure appeared 10 feet in front of Yiguchen. So fast, Yiguchen was slightly shocked. He used wave-like subtle steps, and his figure was unpredictable like a phantom. Tuoba Shang sneered. His soul power burst out along with the power of the totem and bombarded Yiguchen. Yiguchen's perfect sea of consciousness churned violently in his mind. A spiritual power that was not weaker than Tuoba Shang's suddenly surged out. How is this possible? Tuoba Shang's expression changed. For the first time, he was shocked. The soul power released by Yiguchen was even more powerful than that of a life and death chamber warrior. This was simply unreasonable. He felt a trace of unease in his heart. This caused Tuoba Shang's killing intent towards Yi Guchen to skyrocket. 5 Elements Fist. Tuoba Shang punched out again. 5 fist shadows shot out at the same time. Yi Guchen paused and dodged to the side again. Just when he thought he had dodged Tuoba Shang's attack, Tuoba Shang sneered. Yi Guchen, I'll let you understand what it means to be a life and death chamber expert. Following Tuoba Shang's thought, the 5 fist shadows turned around and bombarded Yi Guchen's body. Soul power! Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. The 5 fist shadows formed by the power of the totem actually carried a faint soul ripple. This was a technique that belonged to a life and death chamber expert. The combination of 2 powers could make one's moves more flexible and easier to control. Boom, 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 boom. 5 explosions sounded out continuously. Yi Guchen's body trembled as he flew back dozens of feet. Finally, his feet landed heavily on the ground. With a loud bang, smoke and dust rose. Cough! Yi Guchen coughed out a strand of blood from the corner of his mouth. Yi Guchen, Sword Sect, 5 Crown King, where's your glory from before? Tuoba Shang laughed as he grasped the opportunity and charged at Yi Guchen again. His speed, power and flexibility in controlling his moves were far beyond Yi Guchen's. Yi Guchen's expression was calm. He didn't lose his footing just because he was at a disadvantage. Gravity Sword Domain, go! A burst of sword intent burst out from Yi Guchen's body, causing the surrounding void to distort. An illusory ancient divine mountain appeared. In an instant, a powerful suppressive force crashed down on Tuoba Shang. Tuoba Shang immediately felt as if an ancient divine mountain was pressing down on his shoulder. His speed and flexibility had decreased by a lot. Sword Dao Domain. You have a lot of tricks, but this is still not enough. Tuoba Shang was slightly surprised, but he still didn't care. Yi Guchen's Sword Dao Domain was extremely illusory. It might be effective in suppressing ordinary experts. However, to Tuoba Shang, who was in the life and death chamber, it could only restrict him. Yi Guchen sighed inwardly. If his edgeless sword intent had completely transformed into Sword Dao, then the true Sword Dao domain would be 10 times stronger than this illusory one. At that time, he would be able to suppress experts 1 level higher than Yi Guchen. However, it was still not enough. Yi Guchen didn't hesitate and brought out the Azura sword intent again. An illusory 18-level prison of blood emerged from the sea of blood formed by the sword intent. A vigorous aura of slaughter filled the entire space. Sword Dao domain again. Tuoba Shang frowned. Although he had heard before that Yi Guchen, as a sword master, had extraordinary swordsmanship skills. However, after experiencing it personally, he knew that Yi Guchen was difficult to deal with. If he hadn't obtained an opportunity and entered the life and death chamber, he might not have been Yi Guchen's opponent. God-slaying sword art, Permitha. Yi Guchen used the Azura sword intent to activate the God-slaying sword art's Permitha, multiplying the power of this move. Yi Guchen had rich battle experience. He used the gravity sword domain to restrict Tuoba Shang's movements. Then he used the 18 layers of Azura Blood Sea and the God-slaying sword art to attack Tuoba Shang. Come, demonic 7 kills. Tuoba Shang's aura erupted. Vaguely, there seemed to be a pitch-black air current. This aura made Yi Guchen frown. This aura seemed to be similar to the demonic chi here. Boom, 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 Tuoba Shang threw out 7 punches. Each punch had the power to split mountains. Boom. Violent shockwaves swept out in all directions. Both of them retreated. Yi Guchen frowned and seized the opportunity to attack again. He slashed the blood prison sword at Tuoba Shang's head. Yi Guchen, do you think you can defeat me with this little trick? The 5 elemental totem power surged out from Tuoba Shang's body. It seemed to have turned into a protective shield to block Yi Guchen's attack. Yi Guchen's lips curled into a cold smile. In his sea of consciousness, the meteorite demonic butterfly began to flap its wings. Shortly after, an extremely thin needle pierced through the air and shot into Tuoba Shang's sea of consciousness. Although Tuoba Shang had a spiritual item guarding his sea of consciousness, that needle was the soul-shattering needle. Boom! A surge of soul power exploded into Tuoba Shang's sea of consciousness. Even though he had the life and death threshold, he couldn't endure it. He felt a splitting headache. At this moment, Yiguchen's eyes were swallowed by blood. 2 pitch-black flames burned in his eyes. When Tuoba Shang's eyes met Yiguchen's evil eyes, his entire body stiffened. Countless illusions appeared in his mind. The Eye of Azura and the Heart Demon Fire. This was Yiguchen's move. Chapter 582. The Eye of Azura was an ability that Yiguchen had comprehended through the Azura sword essence. In previous battles, Yiguchen had relied on the Eye of Azura many times to catch the enemy's weakness and defeat them in one blow. Previously, after Yiguchen had refined the demonic heart flame, he had also obtained the demonic heart flame. The Eye of Azura and the demonic heart flame were somewhat similar. However, the Eye of Cultivation was able to manifest countless Azura illusions in the enemy's mind. On the other hand, the demonic heart flame was able to trigger the inner demons hidden in the enemy's heart. Although they looked similar, they were fundamentally different. Therefore, Yiguchen had been thinking about how to combine the two to form a more powerful combination technique. One could imagine that when the Azura illusions and inner demons appeared in the enemy's mind at the same time, the sudden attack would catch the enemy off guard. In addition, Yiguchen had used the Soul Breaker Star Needle to break Tuoba Shang's spiritual item and injure his sea of consciousness. This allowed him to fully utilize these two techniques. At this moment, Tuoba Shang had obviously been hit. His body stiffened as he hugged his head with both hands. The totem power in his body surged violently in all directions as if he had been possessed by a demon. The effect of this combination technique was beyond Yiguchen's expectations. Of course, it also consumed a lot of soul power. If Yiguchen had not broken through to the Great Perfection Sea of Consciousness, his previous Sea of Consciousness would not have been able to withstand such consumption. However, Yiguchen ignored the tiredness in his Sea of Consciousness. He naturally had to seize this opportunity. Demonic Heart Flame. On the surface of Yiguchen's body, a pitch-black flame surged out and enveloped Tuoba Shang. A violent howl came from the pitch-black flame. The demonic heart flame was extremely powerful and had the ability to burn the soul. Both Tuoba Shang's body and soul were suffering from the burning of the demonic heart flame. Tuoba Shang, it's over. Yiguchen once again stimulated his Qi Sea to its limit. Vigorous Jin Qi burst out and poured into the Blood Hell Sword. At the same time, he activated the Rending Edge Array on the Blood Hell Sword, making this move even more powerful. Myriad God Tribulation, Heaven and Earth Annihilation. Yiguchen shouted coldly as the wings of swords appeared on his back. Incomparably ferocious sword Qi burst forth, seemingly possessing the terrifying power to destroy the heavens. The powerful sword energy gathered at the tip of the sword and shot toward Tuoba Shang. Boom! The earth quaked and the mountains shook. The entire underground space seemed to be held by a giant's hand, shaking crazily. Sword light, flames, and dust scattered in all directions. A loud explosion resounded throughout the underground space. Phew! Yiguchen panted and shifted his gaze to the dust-filled area. Yiguchen believed that even Tuoba Shang, who was at life and death chamber, wouldn't be able to survive such an attack. Even if he was lucky, he would at most be left with a single breath. As the dust settled, Tuoba Shang's figure finally appeared. His current appearance could be said to be in a sorry state. His entire body was charred and peeled off, dripping with blood. It was a horrifying sight. What was even more horrifying was that there was a huge bloody hole in his chest. Even his beating heart could be seen. His entire heart was almost completely shattered. This was the piercing damage caused by the destruction of heaven and earth. Not many people could withstand it. However, what surprised Yiguchen was that Tuoba Shang was still breathing. He slowly raised his head. His scarlet eyes were like a beast that was about to devour its prey. It was incomparably terrifying. Yiguchen? Yiguchen! Tuoba Shang let out an earth-shattering roar. It was mixed with unparalleled resentment, anger, hatred, and all kinds of negative emotions. At this moment he was like a demon. He's not dead. Yi Guchen's brows furrowed. He was a little surprised. Tuoba Shang's vitality was too strong. It had exceeded his expectations. Moreover, his heart was shattered. How was it possible that he was still breathing? Yi Guchen faintly felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. Yi Guchen, I want you dead. No one can stop me. I want you dead. Tuoba Shang's words were incoherent. He was incomparably furious. He had broken through to the life and death realm. He thought that he could completely crush Yi Guchen and wash away his previous humiliation. However, who would have thought that Yi Guchen would put him in such a sorry state? If he had not obtained that kind of inheritance in the life and death cave, he might have really died in Yi Guchen's hands today. Yi Guchen waited with rapt attention. He felt that something was wrong with Tuoba Shang. Tuoba Shang's eyes were scarlet. His hands started to form a strange seal. In an instant, Tuoba Shang's body seemed to have turned into a black hole. The surrounding demonic qi surged into Tuoba Shang's body like a tide. Yi Guchen was stunned for a moment. The demonic qi was something that even the barbarian tribe was wary of. Even the slightest contact with it would turn one into a demonic ape. However, Tuoba Shang was absorbing the demonic qi now. Could it be? Yi Guchen's eyes flickered. Devil fetus parasitic medium. Tuoba Shang let out a shrill cry. Almost all the demonic qi in the surrounding underground space was sucked into Tuoba Shang's body. When Tuoba Shang shouted out the devil fetus parasitic medium, the real three-headed six-arms demon ape that had been sealed by the formation started to tremble as if it was about to wake up. As the demonic qi was sucked in, visible changes appeared on Tuoba Shang's body. The charred skin fell off, revealing the black hair underneath. His body grew taller as if he had turned into a small giant. What was more shocking was that two sarcomas grew on both sides of Tuoba Shang's head. Then two heads popped out. They were exactly the same as Tuoba Shang. 4 more arms grew out from both sides of his body. The current Tuoba Shang was exactly the same as the sealed three-headed six-arms demon ape. As expected, Tuoba Shang has obtained the inheritance of the demonic ape. Yi Guchen's heart sank. Since the demonic ape could fight against the ancient god clan, it meant that its strength was not inferior to the ancient god clan. However, what surprised Yi Guchen even more was that the demonized Tuoba Shang's body gradually rose into the air and stood in the void. The spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. After absorbing the demonic qi with the help of the devil fetus parasitic medium, Tuoba Shang's cultivation level had skyrocketed to the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. The gap between them could no longer be bridged by any means. Yi Guchen could defeat or even kill a small hidden martial realm expert, but it was impossible for him to kill a spiritual bridge of heaven and earth expert. They were not on the same level at all. Yi Guchen, I bet you didn't expect that I would obtain the inheritance of the chaotic world demonic ape in the life and death cave. At this moment, Tuoba Shang had 3 heads and 6 eyes that were incomparably scarlet. The demonic ape's race is called the chaotic world demonic ape? Yi Guchen thought to himself, then said, Tuoba Shang, the chaotic world demonic ape is the archenemy of your barbarian tribe's ancestors. Aren't you afraid of being judged by the 5 Elements Temple after obtaining the inheritance? The 5 Elements Temple is nothing. I, Tuoba Shang, am the chosen one. After I kill you, I will obtain the inheritance of the ancient god clan. At that time, I will obtain the inheritance of the ancient god clan and the chaotic world demonic ape clan and become the true king of the barbarian tribe. Tuoba Shang's voice was loud and filled with ambition to devour the world. The ancient god clan and the chaotic world demonic ape clan were both one of the 100 clans in the universe. Just obtaining the inheritance of one of them would give one the foundation to become an expert. One could imagine how powerful Tuoba Shang would be when he grew up in the future if he obtained the inheritance of the 2 clans. If that happened, it wouldn't be as simple as the destruction of the Saint Origin dynasty. Even the entire South Horizon region would face a great catastrophe. Yi Guchen, hand over your life. Tuoba Shang casually threw out a palm that was filled with demonic qi. It was like an ancient demonic mountain that could suppress everything. Chapter 583. Powerful. Too powerful. Tuoba Shang, who had used the devil fetus parasitic medium to devour endless demonic qi, had reached the peak of his cultivation base. He was not someone Yi Guqin could fight against. Even if he wanted to, he was powerless. The gap between their realms was too big. Yi Guqin retreated rapidly, but the black palm formed by the demonic qi blocked all of Yi Guqin's escape routes like a black sky. The Sky Demon General armor on Yi Guqin's body released endless blood-red light. It should be known that the Sky Demon General armor was a supreme-grade mystical weapon with extremely strong defense. After Yi Guqin's continuous killing, the Sky Demon General armor had recovered a lot. It could be said that with the protection of the Sky Demon General armor, ordinary life and death realm experts would not be able to cause much damage to Yi Guqin. However, Tuoba Shang's strength had far surpassed the life and death realm. Puchi. Without any resistance, Yi Guqin was sent flying by the black demonic qi palm. Blood spurted out of his mouth as his body smashed into the side of the mountain. With just one blow, Yi Guqin was severely injured. Yi Guqin's body escaped, coughing up blood. Fortunately, Yi Guqin had a perfect body. In addition to his ancient god form, his body was tough and resilient. He also had the Heavenly Demon General armor to reduce some of the damage. That was why Yi Guqin was able to survive. Yi Guqin, you are now like an ant in my eyes. Tuoba Shang raised his head and laughed. He was in a good mood. He felt like he was the ruler of all living beings, overlooking the mountains and rivers. It was a comfortable feeling. It seems like Tuoba Shang has completely demonized. Yi Guqin lifted the blood-red mask and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, Tuoba Shang's mind had long been demonized. He could no longer be considered a human. At most, he was a puppet of the chaotic world demonic ape. Demonic god hand. Tuoba Shang raised his hand again and pressed down on Yi Guqin. The monstrous demonic qi once again turned into a huge black demonic hand. There were countless strange runes on the demonic hand. It looked like the hand of a demonic god. Rumble. Yi Guqin could not dodge the attack. He could only fight with all his might. Yi Guqin didn't show the slightest hint of fear in his eyes as he faced this overwhelming palm strike. Back in the heavenly wasteland plain, he had dared to attack Gu Xiaoyang, who was at the life and death chamber, with his qi refining realm cultivation base. Not to mention now, a mere heaven and earth spirit bridge was not enough to make Yi Guqin despair. Soul-devouring secret technique. Yi Guqin activated the soul-devouring secret technique. His body seemed to have formed a bottomless pit. All the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the surrounding void was sucked into Yi Guqin's body. Although the spirit-devouring secret art couldn't help him break through to the life and death chamber, it could make the spirit qi in his body more vigorous and make his moves more powerful. Frenzy Blood Array. Yi Guqin activated the Frenzy Blood Array of the Heavenly Demon General armor once again. An extreme devouring power was emitted from the Heavenly Demon General armor, as if it wanted to devour all of his qi and blood. An astonishing aura was emitted from the Heavenly Demon General armor. The ferocious spikes grew out, and blood-colored runes circulated on the surface. The Frenzy Blood Array of the Heavenly Demon General armor was enough to double Yi Guqin's strength. Previously, Yi Guqin had activated the power of the Frenzy Blood Array to kill the life and death chamber expert of the Blood Barbarian tribe, Shuelaizhan. Yi Guqin's cultivation base was already at the pinnacle of the 9 transformations divine soul realm. Coupled with the soul-devouring secret technique, his strength was even more powerful. Now, with the help of the Frenzy Blood Array, his strength had doubled again. How powerful would Yi Guqin's strength become? Yi Guqin clenched his fist and felt an extremely terrifying power brewing in his body. Although his cultivation base was still at the life and death chamber, in terms of true strength, ordinary minor profound martial realm experts were no match for Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin even felt that he could destroy a minor profound martial realm expert with a single punch. Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge, what's there to be afraid of? Yi Guqin once again activated his 2 great sword intents. The fierce gravity sword domain pressed down, and the 18 layers of Azura Blood Sea overturned the heavens and earth. Yiguchen held the blood prison sword with both hands. At this moment, even space and time seemed to have frozen. The demonic god's hand was like a pitch-black sky collapsing as it pressed down. At this moment, Yiguchen's heart was incomparably calm. However, under the calm, there was an incomparably turbulent undercurrent. 10,000 deities tribulation, life fall, Yiguchen's sword swept across the sky. It was indescribable how tragic this sword was. It was as if blood was flowing, and millions of corpses were lying on the ground. What kind of sword technique is this? Even Tuoba Shang's face was filled with astonishment. He had never seen Yiguchen use this sword technique before. Even Yiguchen rarely used it. He wouldn't use it unless it was the last moment. This was because this move consumed too much energy. Of course, there was no need to doubt its power. Boom! An indescribable fluctuation swept through the entire underground space. Even the formation imprisoning the chaotic world demonic ape seemed to have been obliterated by this fluctuation. The dense demonic aura in the surroundings was also blown away by this fluctuation. Rumble! It was as if the heavens and earth were collapsing. Under Tuoba Shang's astonished gaze, his demonic god's hand was suddenly split into two. Even the remaining sword light swept towards Tuoba Shang. Tuoba Shang made his move. Demonic aura surged as he resisted the sword light. Blood splattered as one of Tuoba Shang's pitch-black arms was thrown away. Blood splattered everywhere. Only 5 of his 6 arms were left. Tuoba Shang was stunned. He couldn't believe it. He relied on the devil fetus parasitic medium to absorb endless demonic aura. He didn't even hesitate to become a demon to reach the heaven and earth spiritual bridge realm. But now, one of his arms had been cut off by Yiguchen, who was in the divine soul realm. Although losing one of his arms wasn't a big deal to Tuoba Shang, it was a humiliation. However, that kind of humiliation was even more profound. Who would believe that a heaven and earth spiritual bridge realm martial artist had his arm cut off by a divine soul realm martial artist? Of course, although Tuoba Shang had paid a price, Yiguchen had paid a greater price. His entire body had sunk into the deep pit. Fresh blood gushed out, dyeing the already blood-red heavenly demon general armor even more sorrowful. Yiguchen stood up with difficulty and coughed up blood. He hadn't been in such a sorry state for a long time. However, if an outsider saw this scene, they would definitely look at Yiguchen in a new light. This was because he was able to cut off one of Tuoba Shang's arms even though he was 2 whole realms above him. This kind of ability was frightening. Yiguchen, no one can stop you from dying today. Demonic ape shakes the heavens. Tuoba Shang's eyes were scarlet. He was so angry that his internal organs were burning. He charged towards Yiguchen and wanted to tear Yiguchen apart. Yiguchen tried his best to recover from his injuries. Just as he was about to fight to the death, the ancient voice sounded in his mind again. My race's successor, bring the ancient god's jade archive into my heart. Yiguchen looked at the golden ancient god statue. This was Yiguchen's only chance at survival. Chapter 584. Previously, Yiguchen had relied on the ancient voice in his mind to reach this stage. Since Tuoba Shang could obtain the devil fetus parasitic medium, Yiguchen believed that the ancient god tribe would have a backup plan. Perhaps the ancient god tactic was the way to restrain the devil fetus parasitic medium. However, Yiguchen could not compete with Tuoba Shang in his current realm. His only chance was to follow the ancient voice in his mind. There might still be a chance for him to survive. The ancient god jade archive was the 5 sacred beasts' ancient jade. Yiguchen immediately understood. He waved his hand and a crimson figure appeared. Blood Cloud Puppet Go! The crimson figure was the Blood Cloud Puppet. It relied on the power of the demonic cloud blood crystal to activate it. Yiguchen had not used it until now because he wanted to use it as a trump card at the critical moment. Now that it was a matter of life and death, Yiguchen summoned the Blood Cloud Centipede. Boom! Without any hesitation, Yiguchen activated the power of the Blood Cloud Puppet to the maximum. A terrifying aura emanated from the Blood Cloud Puppet. Its strength had reached the level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Of course, the energy used to raise the blood cloud puppet's strength to the level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth was also terrifying. The demonic cloud blood crystal was being consumed at the speed of combustion. It would not last long. Bang! The blood cloud puppet stomped on the ground and charged toward Tuoba Shang like a cannonball. This is a puppet. Tuoba Shang was stunned. Boom! As the blood cloud centipede's fist came crashing down, Tuoba Shang's 5 arms also came crashing down. Bang! 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 Continuous explosions rang out in the void as the blood cloud mantis and Tuoba Shang were locked in a fierce battle. Tuoba Shang had 3 more arms. He punched the blood cloud puppet, and every time he punched it, it would be pushed back dozens of feet. However, the blood cloud puppet was a puppet and did not feel pain. Tuoba Shang's attacks could only leave deep fist marks on its body. Do you think a puppet can save your life? Demonic chi surged all over Tuoba Shang's body. A pitch-black demonic seal appeared in midair and pressed down on the blood cloud puppet. Hearing this, Yiguchen sneered. Naturally, he didn't plan to let the blood cloud centipede deal with Tuoba Shang because it couldn't. His figure flashed as he dashed toward the golden ancient god statue. Could it be? Tuoba Shang caught a glimpse of something from the corner of his eye and his heart skipped a beat. In his mind, the same demonic voice entered his ears. Stop him! Stop him from awakening the ancient god. A demonic voice sounded in Tuoba Shang's mind. Yiguchen, if you want to make a comeback, don't even think about it. The pitch-black demonic seal forced the blood cloud centipede back. Tuoba Shang then charged towards Yiguchen. However, the blood cloud centipede was like a dogskin plaster, sticking tightly to Tuoba Shang and continuing the battle. Scram! Tuoba Shang punched out with his pitch-black demonic fist. There was actually a trace of panic in his heart. After using the devil fetus parasitic medium, Tuoba Shang thought that victory was already in his hands. No matter how strong Yiguchen was, he wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. However, Yiguchen, who was like an ant in his eyes, had the ability to threaten him. Just as the blood cloud centipede was tangling with Tuoba Shang, Yiguchen finally climbed up the majestic golden ancient god statue. Yiguchen landed at the heart of the golden ancient god statue and took out the ancient god jade archive. In an instant, the ancient god jade archive, which was carved with the totems of the 5 mythical beasts, released a ball of 5-colored light that seemed to resonate with the golden ancient god statue. The majestic golden ancient god statue started to rumble and tremble. The golden light on the surface of the statue flickered as though it was breathing. No, Yiguchen, don't even think about it. When Tuoba Shang saw this, he couldn't take it anymore. Boundless demonic chi burst out from his body. Demonic Sky Destroyer. Tuoba Shang raised one of his hands and the boundless demonic chi turned into a pitch-black demonic staff. He waved one of his hands and the pitch-black demonic staff hit the blood cloud centipede with a force that could destroy the sky. Boom! A terrifying explosion resounded in all directions. The blood cloud centipede was blown up by Tuoba Shang's demonic staff. Then, Tuoba Shang's body flashed and he charged toward Yiguchen. Just as Tuoba Shang's fist was about to hit Yiguchen's body. Suddenly, a ball of golden light spread out from the golden ancient god statue and turned into a barrier. Boom! When Tuoba Shang's fist landed on the golden barrier, he was sent flying by a huge recoil force. Tuoba Shang's face froze and his eyes turned even redder. With the ancient god jade archive in his hand, Yiguchen seemed to have turned into a ray of light and merged into the heart of the golden ancient god statue. In an instant, Yiguchen came to an inexplicable place as though the world had changed. A 5-colored brilliance filled the air and countless totem shadows were imprinted in the surrounding void. My successor has finally arrived. Yiguchen muttered to himself. An ancient and loud voice echoed like the voice of a deity. Yiguchen looked around and saw an incomparably huge golden phantom appear in this space. Yiguchen was as small as an ant under the golden shadow's feet. You are indeed a senior from the ancient god clan. Yiguchen cupped his hands. I am a 4-star ancient god from the ancient god clan. My name is Heavenly Pupil King and I am here to suppress the chaotic world demon ape clan. A loud voice came from the Golden Shadow's mouth. I am Yiguchin. Greetings, Senior Heavenly Pupil King. Yiguchin took a deep breath and said, it was only after seeing such an ancient clan that one could feel its supreme power. I did not expect that the person who could inherit my legacy would be from that clan. Heavenly Pupil King looked deeply at Yiguchin. Yiguchin frowned slightly. That clan? Senior Heavenly Pupil King, what do you mean? Yiguchin was confused. You should know that there are 100 supreme clans in the all heavens. The ancient god clan is one of them, and so is the chaotic world demon ape clan. However, I can see that your bloodline is also from one of the 100 clans in the all heavens, Heavenly Pupil King said meaningfully. Oh, may I know which clan I belong to? Yiguchin asked curiously. From the ancient existence of the ancient god clan, it could be seen that the so-called 100 clans in the all heavens must be extremely ancient and powerful clans. However, Yiguchin was born in an ordinary family. Neither his father, who had left when he was young, nor his aunt, Xian Su, had told him anything about his identity. Now, Heavenly Pupil King said that his bloodline was related to one of the 100 clans in the all heavens. This made Yiguchin curious. Didn't your clansmen tell you? Heavenly Pupil King asked. Yiguchin shook his head. The only clue he had about his background was the heavenly mountain. Ying Ning once said that her lover from 1,000 years ago also cultivated the universal sword scripture and came from the heavenly mountain. Since that is the case, there is no need for me to say more. You only need to know that your clan was once extremely glorious and was known as the #1 clan in the all heavens. However, later on, Heavenly Pupil King sighed. Later on? Yiguchin was puzzled. Later on, it became a taboo. Heavenly Pupil King was a little afraid and did not want to say more. Taboo? Yiguchin's eyes were deep. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.